Testing for YouTube. Testing 1, 2, 3.
All right, welcome everyone. We'll call to order our Committee of the Whole meeting, and thanks everyone for joining us tonight. Before we get started, I would like to recognize and appreciate that we live, work, and play in the city of Port Alberni, which is situated on the unceded territories of the Sechot and Hupachesit First Nations. We do have an agenda in front of us. Are there any late items to add from councillors? Seeing none, any late items from our corporate officer?
No late items, Chair Minions.
Great, then would somebody like to move approval of our agenda? Moved by Councillor Batola, seconded by Councillor Solda.
Sorry, Mayor Minions. I do have an amendment to add to
thank
the
you.
financial plan
Wonderful.
regarding
Let's
tree
see.
planting.
Okay, wonderful. We'll add that to the financial plan discussion. We'll allow it. All right, would somebody like to move approval of the agenda with the amendment? Thank you. Moved and seconded. Councillor Batola, Councillor Solda. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed, and recognizing as well that Councillor Haggard is joining us online. And thanks at the back for just putting your hand up if you guys happen to see her with her hand up and I miss it. Okay, and on to adoption of minutes. We have minutes from the meeting held at 6 p.m. on January 20th, 2025 as presented. Move to adopt by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Any comments on the minutes? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And public input period. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the committee. A maximum of 6 speakers for up to 5 minutes each can be accommodated. And for anyone participating electronically, please use the raise your hand feature and I will call on you in the order in which your hand appears. Would any members of the public like to speak today? Okay, Joseph, I'll get Joseph first and then next.
You're sure? Okay, thanks.
Come on up, Ron.
Of course. Okay. Yep, sorry about that. Good evening. Sorry? Yes, I am.
You actually have a delegation spot on the agenda.
Oh, so this is,
Speak for a little longer, actually.
oh, all right. And while I'm here, I'd just like to say hi to Councillor Haggard.
Thank you. And sorry, yes, so there's a delegation scheduled for this item, so we'll move on to anyone who doesn't have a delegation tonight. So Joseph, and then anyone else who would like to come forward.
Sorry about that, I preempted. It's okay.
Good evening, Council and Mayor and everybody that's here and online. Surprised, I thought things were closing down today. I thought maybe it might be the case tonight too, so. Just want to read something off, and it's on tonight's agenda. This is something I'm going to recommend that Council ask the Parks Public Places bylaw number 5121-2024 be rewritten in simple, clear form without ambiguity and sounding dictatorial. That invites mayor, council, and public free and respectful dialogue regarding decisions surrounding the use and enjoyment of public spaces. And I'm going to read something off to you. The reason I've picked those two things out, on the bylaw, reading through the bylaw 5123 on page 53, I believe it is, it says, and it's just sort of unclear to me what these things actually mean. Whereas council may by bylaw establish rules and regulations for managing, maintaining, improving, and operating city of Port Alberni parks and public places for the pleasure, recreation, or community use of the public. That last line, or community use of the public, the wording in here just seems a little strange. So I'm not a wordsmith, but if somebody wants to read that and say, does that kind of make sense the way that's written? Second line, whereas council may by bylaw regulate and prohibit impose requirements with respect to services, nuisances, disturbance, and other objectionable situations. The word objectionable situations, that's kind of, again, what is that? Objectionable situations, that's kind of vague and it's a little bit broad and it doesn't really by whose standard or who's making the decision, what's objectionable and that. So I'm not clear what that means. So that's why I'm looking for a little bit of clarity on the way it's written. And the third line, whereas council wishes to protect and enhance recreation areas, preserve natural and environmental conditions, and ensure safety and enjoyment while preventing conflicts within its city parks and public places. Again, while preventing conflicts within city parks and public places. Baseball games, hockey games, there's a lot of conflict in those. They get a little aggressive, and of course, some people are, what would you say, a bit more competitive. So again, it's too broad. It just somehow something's missing in there as far as I see it. Anyhow, you may not see it differently, but so those are why I'm asking that you look at again and have it rewritten or looked at for that. And the second one that I want to bring up is on page 57. Council delegates their powers under Section 15 of the Community Charter, SBC 2003, C26, as amended to the manager. As per Section 156 of the Community Charter, Council may overturn a delegate. So it goes on to say it can be overturned, but it's asking, what I'm reading here is you're delegating your power to one person to make decisions surrounding these things that are in the amended bylaw 5123. So you're kind of giving that to one person to make those decisions. Now they can be, if there's, council may overturn a delegated decision made under the decision upon appeal. So I don't quite know why you'd give it to one person and not keep it within council and mayor. I know it simplifies things a bit, but it also puts it on the shoulders of one person that, again, I think can be a little bit, it doesn't allow for enough input perhaps, and can be a little bit, as I say, can seem a little bit, not that it's intended to, but a bit dictatorial is that's why I put that in there. So that's it for tonight, just that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. And of course, this is on our agenda for the night, so there'll be discussion on it at the point in time. Would any other members of the public like to speak today? I just want to offer to restorative justice, just because you are on the agenda, but not as a delegation. So you won't be invited up to speak when we do get to your point in the agenda. So if you did want to speak at all, you're welcome to now. If you wanted to share any overview on it, and no pressure if not, because I know you have been here to speak before. But if there's anything you want to add, this would be the time. So come on forward if you'd like to.
Hi, Council and Your Worship. Alex Glassy from the Alberni Valley Restorative Justice Society. We've put forward an amendment to request for funding dated January 10th. I imagine you are in receipt of that. And I'm not sure there's anything to add other than when I first came here in September and presented, we were looking for $150,000. That was the request at that time. And we've since, and for multiple years of funding, and we've since revised that substantially downward so that it is within the, more appropriately within the city's budget. We're now looking for $38,000 plus some space for us to hold meetings and circles. Is that what you're looking for?
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship.
Wonderful. All right, not seeing any other hands for members of the public, we will move on to delegations, and we will welcome up the Port Alberni Pickleball Club. And so just for awareness, our delegations get a little extra time, so up to 10 minutes, and then council can ask questions as well.
Okay, thank you. So, good evening again. For those of you that don't know me, or know us, my name is Ron Crema, and this is Darwin Horning. We represent the PA Picklers Association, a local pickleball club registered under the Societies Act. That was a good segue. This is going to be right down your alley. Thanks for having us. Just a few introductory comments before I turn it over to Darwin. Roughly 12 years ago, I made a pickleball presentation to the ACRD, introducing this new and exciting sport, a sport for all ages and athletic ability. When asked, what do you want? The answer was simple, Nothing. I wanted to share the enthusiasm for the sport that a few close friends and I brought back from a snowbird winter in California and introduce it to the leaders of our community. I think, Cindy, you may have been there. Our little group of 10 now is on track to hit over 150 participants this year. That's a 1,400% growth rate. There is no other sport on earth that can boast those statistics. This sport has taken the world by storm and has become somewhat of a phenomenon. And if you're taking notes, now would be a good time. In 2023, 13.6 million people played pickleball in the US, up 52% from the 8.9 million registered pickleball players in 2022, which was up from the 4.1 million players the previous year. So you can see the growth is exponential. Today in Canada, recent statistics have us just under 1.5 million players. Practically every community on Vancouver Island has invested in dedicated pickleball courts due to the growing demand for this fun, low-impact inclusivity sport. We are here to present an opportunity for the city that will increase the value of an existing asset and will not burden our taxpayers. So I'd now like to hand it over to Darwin, who will be speaking on behalf of our subcommittee and our association. Thank you.
Thanks for having us tonight. My name's Darwin Horning. I'm relatively new to the community here. I think I've been here a year now. And I got involved in the pickleball. This is for my first year in pickleball as well, so I'm not a seasoned veteran like Ron is. But we play around. There's many of us that actually go out to other communities to play in addition to the ones we play in town. We go to tournaments, we go to different leagues and stuff like that. And there is a group that's been there for quite a while, since probably when Ron started the group, they are really interested in expanding the sport in Port Alberni and having facilities to allow us to do that right now. And right now we're struggling a little bit. We don't have a year-round facility, and we have one dedicated court basically for pickleball. Everything else we kind of make do with sharing and stuff like that. So what we did was we started broad, thinking about what the vision of was for the group, and then narrowed it down to, okay, what's realistic? Particularly in this time with, I appreciate the tough job you guys have to figure out budgets and the asks that keep coming to council. And we landed on Gyro Park as, we play there currently. And the other piece of it that we wanted to make sure is that we weren't, it wasn't a zero-sum game. Like what we gained wasn't at the expense of a different sport, which you hear a lot. Central Sandwich comes up to mind, anybody following pickleball at all. So we reached out to the tennis court, and actually a few of the people in the tennis group play pickleball as well. So we've been working with a few of them and trying to come up with a plan that works for both clubs. And the plan that we've come up with is, as I think we've distributed it to you, is that we would like to convert two of the tennis courts that exist right now into pickleball courts. And that would, I think we'd end up, and then the third tennis court we make as a convertible. So it could be tennis when tennis needs it, or it can be pickleball when pickleball needs it. And then leave the remaining two courts for tennis as well. And what that involves, we went out and got some estimates and things like that. Certainly your staff would understand that it needs resurfacing. There's significant cracks going on there right now. It's gonna have to be resurfaced at some point. So we're really not, in a sense, we're not really asking for much, in the sense that it's more aligned with, in the short term, aligned with your infrastructure improvements is what we hope to do, is the resurfacing of that. And then we're hoping as a committee and as a group that we would collaborate with the funding side of it to come up with additional funds through grants and things like that, that we could then sort of participate in the fencing and the additional things that go on there as well. So that's kind of the ask from our perspective is that that's, in the short term, we hope that we could maybe prioritize the tennis courts, the resurfacing of the tennis courts, and the painting of the lines, so that represents the schematic that I think Ron did that up for you guys in the short term. We've met with staff. I think Ron and I met with Willa, and then Ron met again, and she had some fantastic ideas. If you look around, it's it's the, looking internally, there's significant amount of benefit to it. The health. I've played sports my whole life. I've never been involved in a sport that has the range of ages that get involved, right from young people right through to 7-year-olds, and competitive within that. So I haven't seen that before in any of the sports that I've played. So it's a unique sport. It's a very social sport, which is really interesting as well. We were going to try and show a video, but we couldn't get it on. I just got back from Mexico, and they were having a social thing, and it was actually, I didn't film the pickleball, I filmed the social aspect of it with people getting together, coming from all over the world to play pickleball there. So we're hoping that the city can, we can work with the city to prioritize this as a benefit for the existing infrastructure that's in need of repair, and recognizing the constraints on funding right now. Longer term, I know there's a master plan going on as well. We want to get into that, and we have participated in one of those sessions to look at, what does the club want over the longer term, and that would be more in line with the vision of what Vernon has. They have got a covered facility, and you have to host sort of recognized tournaments, you have to have a minimum number of courts to accommodate that, and Vernon now has that. And because of that, they hosted the Western Canadians last year, and they're hosting them again this year. So, I've worked within a city environment. The economic benefit of having these tournaments come in can be quite substantial, and because they have the facilities, they're able to draw people to it. And it goes beyond, like, you talk to our club members. We plan our holidays now around what places have pickleball courts. Then we look for the sunshine after that. But all joking aside, that's how, people are so involved and get involved. We actually have heard now people are actually relocating to places that have good pickleball facilities. When they're moving out of the bigger centers, they want to make sure they have the facilities, and pickleball being what it is, draws people as well. So there's a real economic aspect to it as well, which I think at this time is important. I think other than that, we hope to partner with the city on things like ongoing maintenance and upkeep, which is what we heard from the staff as well. And we've got several members that, we're running it ourselves right now, and several members will certainly be involved in, helping out with whatever that would require. Yeah, and I think that's it. Budget, we got some estimates, and it's in your documents there. Just very ballpark kind of conceptual things, just to get an idea of what's going to cost what moving forward on that. Benefits, we've talked about it, and we hope that the city can commit to maybe allocating funds for the resurfacing of it, and then collaborating with us moving forward. We've want to meet with the economic development officer. I've reached out, but we haven't had a chance to meet yet, and look at grant funding. Vernon's, I believe, I don't know the real details of it, but they got significant funding, grant funding, to achieve what they achieved, and I think we can do the same here. And then establish this long-term partnership with the city to keep this going and expand it on tournaments and collaborate with Funtastics or other tournaments to really create some excitement in the city. So thanks for your time, everybody.
Thank you very much to both of you for presenting today and for the work that you've done. And I know I've got some picklers in my family, so I hear about this sport pretty excessively, but definitely appreciate the growth compared to other similar activities. Like, I completely understand that it is like nothing else. As you know, we're facing a very challenging budget year, so we'll certainly have discussion about this. But I'm not sure if there will be ability to do anything this year or not. We can certainly ask our Director of Parks, Recreation and Heritage and Culture if there's anything that could be swapped out within current budget, but I'm not really sure where that stands. Comments? Yeah, I'll go to Councillor Solda and then Councillor Patola.
Thanks for your presentation. I have a brother-in-law who just loves pickleball, as you guys probably are quite aware of, and he does that in the Arizona right now. So what I would like to know is, where did you get your estimates from? Like, how do you know? Were you working with Parks and Recreation regarding this? And that's one question, so I'll stop there for a minute.
Good. We have one of our members is Len, and I forgot Len's last name, but that's what he has done, is built parks across the island as a career. He led this, and my background is in development as well, and so we reached out to local contractors where we could to get estimates. We met them at the facility, kind of described and showed them the plans that we were thinking about, and then just got some rough estimates on it. Nothing, not three, yes, none of the official thing. We just wanted to get a ballpark figure, but we used, existing contractors and we reached out to some of the other communities to find out who they had and who they were happy with the new facilities that they have. Places like Tofino and Nanaimo have all built new pickleball courts, and we reached out to them to kind of get some idea of who they had used. Did they do it internally? Did they use contractors? Were they happy with the work? For instance, in Nanaimo, there was a little bit of a problem with the painting of it once it was done, and they've remedied that. So we wanted to learn all of that in this thing. And two of our members were involved in the courts that were built out at Sprott Lake as well. So they came in with experience in doing this as well. So I hope that answers your question. So it was legitimate contractors that we reached out to.
Okay, and just to keep following up, yes, Sprout Lake is really busy with their pickle
Yeah.
court. And the other question is, do you think it's just a fad, like it's going to be there for 5 years? I mean, if you're going to invest a lot of money into a court, is it just a one or two? And I have other questions too, so.
No, legitimate question. And I've played for a year now, so I've had that question myself. Is it, I've seen the excitement around with it and my own excitement about it. But, the question is when you come, working to collaborate and asking for money or asking for things to happen, is it a fad? Is it, I was in the era when they had, the skateboard parks came in, and, there was a really strong buzz about skateboard parks. Some were built, some weren't, some were used, some weren't. It kind of comes and goes. And I was wondering about that, but I think Ron would be the right guy to talk. It's been existing for quite a while, and seeing the people that say, anecdotally, that came together in Mexico where I was at, they're worldwide, and this is a worldwide phenomenon. They're talking about it for the 2028 Olympics, I believe. So hard to say. That's a question I can't answer it, but seeing it and the excitement about it, I'm sure it'll go through its ups and downs a little bit, but I think the variety of ages and types of people that can play and the ease that you can get into this sport, I think bodes well for it not being a fad, because it's easy to play. As you get older, I transitioned over from squash because my knees can't take the rigor of squash anymore. But so it's an easy transition. So we're all getting older, and and for the young people as well. The U.S. has high school leagues now, and they just started one in Calgary as well. So. I don't think it is, and worst case scenario, if it is, you're left with a vacant lot to do anything you want with. Like there's no significant infrastructure, like a building or any of that kind of stuff that needs to be torn down or anything like that. It's just a tennis court basically. It's a flat piece of pavement, so it's not like it's something that you have taken out of the use for something else down the road if it turns out to be a trend, which I don't think it will be, but.
Hey, just a couple of more questions here.
Yeah.
So it's great to see that it's being utilized. I mean, that tennis court at the time has been there forever and not used. And it was used a lot in the 70s and 80s, but it's not been utilized a lot. So it's great to see that it is being used. And there is the odd tennis players I see down there. But the other question would be, so when we talk about fundraising, how much are you expecting the city? I know you mentioned about being part of the conversion and the resurfacing, but how much are you looking at fundraising yourselves if you were involved in doing so?
As much as we can. Looking at that long and over time too. So one of the things that we did was we broke this down into phases, thinking about and attaching it, a timeline to those things as well. Ideally we would like to, Vernon has set kind of the gold standard with a year-round facility where they can draw tournaments from Western Canadians. A lot of these tournaments are starting to go international now. We just started to compete against the U.S. and Mexico and the Americas. Where that goes, I don't know. But as far as the fundraising, my background is in city planning, and I see us as having such a compelling story right now for attracting funding. I worked the last 10 years with nations, and there's obviously there's an advantage there, but with cities, particularly this one, you're going through a cycle similar to Prince George, which was where I'm from. Our forestry industry is struggling. The tariffs coming. All of these things lend to putting in strong applications for grants. So how much, I don't know. As much as we can, because we want to, build a year-round facility if we could, and then training and however else, whatever creative other things we can come up with. So I don't know exactly. But we did recognize the challenge that the city has right now, and wanted to keep, the first stage of this as easy as possible to move forward with. And that for us, it was including it in upgrading existing infrastructure. And like you say, the use of it's totally underutilized. All of it is underutilized. And having a group like us there and building on that, I think does a lot of things, as you guys will be aware of it.
Super, thank you for answering those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patola, and then Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just start with the material you've presented. And the comments set out at proposed plan number 1, convert 2 underutilized tennis courts. How did you arrive at that determination that the tennis courts are underutilized, and what would be an appropriate utilization for tennis courts?
Mainly the experience of the people that have been playing in that, going out and playing in that park for the last however many years that they've been there. And also talking to the tennis players themselves, who are part of the pickleball group as well. Anecdotally, they'd said that they've seldom see any more than 1 court playing, maybe 2 at the most. But few have ever seen more than 3 courts being used, most likely recently. And that's not unusual, right? That's the trend that we're seeing across the world right now is sort of that, I don't know whether it's maturing or tapering off of tennis. But again, back to my original comment was I don't want this to be sort of the zero-sum thing. Having pickleball there may also encourage, more tennis to be played, because they're very compatible in that sense. And you're seeing a lot of transition back and forth between tennis and Eugenie Bouchard going pro pickleball, but playing back and forth. So I think that there's a possibility that of us encouraging each other in that sense. And that's why we reached out really early to have some of the tennis guys represented within our discussions and our planning and that type of stuff.
So I'd be correct in saying that the statement that the tennis courts are underutilized is anecdotal.
Is what, pardon me?
Anecdotal.
Yeah.
And also the statements that tennis is on the decline, is that anecdotal as well, or do you have any studies to present?
Nope, no studies, just anecdotal.
So, so carrying on with the intent of the proposal to make sure that use is increased and no other recreational activities suffer by creating a new one. You stated you recognize the challenges of the city. Assuming that means with regards to funding, I'm wondering what considerations you've made to the challenges of the city with regards to other programs in recreation, such as accessible playgrounds, ball fields, soccer fields, the skateboard park, and the pool, just to name a few.
Yeah, if I have your question right, is that in our ask, were we thinking about what might be the impact on some of these other programs that are out there? We started from the point that it being, so to back up a little bit, we actually looked around the entirety of the city to see where would it make sense to have additional courts or expanded courts, and there was a few other sites, different members in the committee came together and looked at different sites. And we always ended up back at Gyro Park. One is it's zoned that. 2 is the city has planned for recreational activities to happen there. So that's a big hurdle to get over. We don't need to rezone. We're not starting from scratch or taking a piece of land away that might be used for something else. One of the ones was the golf frisbee. We looked down at the bottom there, and that was when we talked to Willow, and she said, no, there's a use there already going on. So that was mainly the considerations, not knowing sort of the funding aspects for some of these other programs. But that's, for us, was to be the least impactive in a negative way on other programs, but more so in a more positive way by supporting Gyro Park and bringing more people into Gyro Park, and having those other facilities there is great. Pickleball have kids too, so having them up in the park would be great. So that's about the level of consideration that we have in these early stages, right? This is our first sort of approach to this, so it's
Yeah, thank you. And I think that, and I don't want to characterize what you're getting at with your question, Councillor Patola, but I think we can't expect certainly a group that comes forward, having put some work in to try to research a request prior to just making it, to have done a whole facilities master plan on the total needs that all exist for all users in the city. So definitely appreciate that that's not realistic to expect from someone coming forward simply saying, can we, make this improvement for a sport that I think we can all see is certainly getting a lot of traction in the community. But yeah, just want to note that we wouldn't expect a volunteer group to come forward and have done that full assessment. Go ahead, Councillor Patola, if you have follow-up questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I, in fact, would expect some analysis along those lines, simply because we all know that there's a pie. The pie in this case would be the recreation budget. The recreation budget has to be divided up between many different users. And it's unfortunate that some groups, and I'm not necessarily saying this one, because even the fact that you speak about benefiting multiple groups and not taking away from other is very forward-thinking and appreciated. Although I do want to take every opportunity to stress that all groups should be considering their impact on other groups. And it's not, we often hear comments, whether they be here or in public, that essentially represent a bidding war. That, oh no, the budget is tight and the taxes are going to go up. We better get in there first, elbows out, make sure we get what we want, irrespective of everybody else. And the only reason why I bring that up is because I think that it behooves the community to think about themselves as a community. And certainly pickleball players are a growing part of the community. So it's not to take away from that ask, and I'm more or less utilizing this opportunity and the information you have put forward and the consideration you put in to highlight that excellent approach and to expand on that. I do have one further question, which is simply with regards to your membership. With regards to your membership, do you know the number or percentage that live in the city and are city taxpayers?
I'll answer that question, then maybe just expand on that previous thing. So we don't know. We don't track who is in, who lives within the city. We don't collect that kind of information. For us, it's pickleball players or pickleball players for us. And as we charge a fee because we rent the facilities, particularly over the wintertime. And we do the same when we go to other communities and play in Parksville or Nanaimo or wherever we go. So we don't have that information, and I know that's of interest to the city as to sharing costs for these things for sure. We intend on presenting to the regional district as well, and so they're aware of it as well, and to keep that conversation going. So maybe back up to your previous question, just to respond to your comments there, is that, yeah, I'm not sure if I agree with your characterization of us getting our elbows up and coming in and not. One of the things we have done is the entire approach that we're taking here, recognizing that taxes are, it's a tough situation right now, particularly in Port Alberni. We structured our approach to recognize that and haven't come out of the gun saying we want a covered facility, year-round covered facility, because we think that's probably unrealistic. We as a club need to grow into something like that and show that there's a need for something like that. But we did want to position ours within infrastructure upgrade. So it's kind of a little bit different from the way you've characterized it, in the sense that we are a recreational club, but it's your asset that's there. and it's your asset that needs to be upgraded right now. Resurfacing it, you gain another, it's probably going to be cheaper now to do it than, as we know with infrastructure, it doesn't get better over time. It gets worse and costs more to address that. So, you know, our approach, we haven't specifically thought about other clubs, but we have set in on the master planning, and we have heard other clubs and the things that they're interested in, the things that mountain biking, for instance, you know, all of those types of things. So we're aware of these things, but our approach was trying to take the path of least resistance, or the easiest path forward for the thing. So we're not asking for a major funding infusion. We're just asking for maybe a higher priority in the refurbishment of the city's infrastructure. And we bring to the table a lot of things that underutilized. No, we haven't done a study on how many tennis players are out there. We can, and we could. But I don't want to get ahead of ourselves either, because, you know, we've mentioned it, or we want to collaborate with the city. I do, but I don't know how many of our group knows how to actually take a survey and do that, and what that looks like, a proper survey. I'd rather work with city staff on that one and see what do they have as far as information first, and then B, how do we work together to get the information that the city needs, as opposed to what, you know, we're just throwing darts at a dartboard, figuring out what it is that you guys might need.
I apologize if I wasn't clear. I,
Yeah.
in fact, said that I was commending you for the approach you took.
Oh, okay, sorry. I
And
misheard
not
you.
characterizing you as one of the less community-minded groups. That
Okay.
sometimes we do hear approaches
Yeah.
that are more elbows
Fair
out
enough, yeah.
than yours.
Yeah,
And
I apologize.
certainly
That's what I thought I heard.
appreciate your
Good.
your
Yeah.
approach.
Yeah.
Certainly, it is early in the process, and there's more information to find out.
Yep.
But the more information that you have to start with,
For sure.
the better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we have more, like we were trying to bring examples to show. I don't know how many are aware of the pickleball course. I think, you know, one's in Tofino and the one's in Nanaimo, and some of the social things. So just to give the council an idea of what it is, that, you know, what it might look like. And maybe, you know, I don't know the council, so I don't know where you guys are at on that. But I think Ron wanted to
Yeah, I
say
just
something
had
as well.
one other point. When I introduced this, I did make a comment about not burdening the taxpayers. And I'd like to go back to that, because I believe the ask from our group at this point is A, to upgrade the facilities this year, but B, is for us to aggressively fundraise in order to finance that activity and have the city, and I guess the commitment we're looking for from the city is to put that money that we may donate upwards, let's say we're hoping for $150,000 worth, put that in a restricted donation account rather than going into general revenue. That kind of thing is kind of what we're asking for at this point.
Thank you. That's a very
Thank you.
helpful clarification. Councillor Mealy and then Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much for coming, guys. Appreciate it. So the first question was answered, and I figured it out, obviously, but for the people at home, there's no reference to where the tennis courts are. So it is gyro, not like Lawn Miles Field.
Gyro,
Okay, just want to make sure, because it's not in the agenda package for the people at home. So I guess, well, first of all, there's a good question. Have you say you've considered other places in town? Is Lawn Miles tennis court? And I mean, it's been a while since I've been up there, but I'm still sure it's still a tennis court and it's very underutilized. Have you looked at it? Is it even viable?
Yeah.
Or are you looking to the synergies that can happen at gyro?
Well, I'll say this. Roughly 12 years ago, we scoured the city for places to play. I mean, we started in a parking lot in California, and we came to Port Alberni, and, you know, so we looked all over the place, and the old Klitza School tennis courts was an obvious place to look because they're abandoned. They're in pretty rough shape. But the consideration there was the noise. We were right in the hub of a residential area. And even myself, it would drive me crazy. So we abandoned that idea at that point. Yeah.
Sorry, just one more. So when it's this time of year, what city facilities do you use during the winter time? Do you use Glenwood Athletic Hall? Or athletic halls in the city, I'm saying, but.
Yeah, we use the athletic hall for our club, and then smaller groups go out to some of the other community halls and play in small groups. But majority is played in the athletic hall. But that's not easy, because it's a popular facility, right? And so it's hard for us. We get bumped, and so yeah.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Haggard, then Councillor Solda, and Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, Ron, I couldn't be there in person, but I don't trust my little car and I can't get on my driveway tonight. So anyway, I'm here by Zoom, so I'm happy to be here. First of all, I want to tell a story, then I'll make a couple of comments. I actually know a couple who wanted to move to Port Alberni. They phoned Echo Center to ask about their pickleball courts. At that time, there was no pickleball courts in Port Alberni, so they did not move to Port Alberni. However, as soon as we got pickleball in Port Alberni, they did move here. So it is a very popular sport and it does attract people. As you know, as you said earlier, we're in a very difficult budget year, so I don't think we can support you financially, but I would like to suggest to council that we support you any way that we can. If any grants become available, maybe help you with a grant proposal or work with you if you need any support for fundraising. You know, those kind of things we can certainly support you in. I just don't think we support you financially this year, but the support is there and we all appreciate the work that you are doing for this sport. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Solda and then Councillor Dame.
It's, first of all, I want to talk about the fundraising for the fund. We've done it for other organizations, and maybe we can explain how that would work. The other one is, I really like that what you have presented to us, although the skateboard organization fundraising and all that gave an amazing detailed plan, just so you know, we got something that just blew me out of this water.
They're asking for more money.
I know, they are. And they're doing the fundraising too. So I just wanted to, bounce that off to you.
Our court is a little flatter.
Yeah.
Okay.
A little
Easier
simpler.
to draw.
But I am really glad what you brought forward, and but I agree with Councillor Haggard on that, what she just said, and if somebody could explain how that would work. And in the master plan for Parks and Rec, when is that report going to come in, and will it detail anything about the tennis courts or pickleball courts, whatever way you want to call it?
Great. I'll go to our CAO to answer that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. As far as donations, we do have a new policy. What it is, if somebody makes a donation, they have to specify what that will go towards. And you can find all that information out either talking to Willa or the CFO. But we do have a new policy, and we'd be happy to provide that to you on how it would be. Once the funds are held for a certain facility or activity, then we hold it until it's expended in that way. On the other one was the master plan. I believe we're just going to be coming back out to public with the midway sort of on the Parks Rec and Culture Master Plan, and we are looking at all aspects. So I'm sure there will be pickleball mentioned in there, as I'm sure there will be tennis mentioned in there.
Thank you. Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, my question was answered. It was the same question as Councillor Solda's. But while I have the floor, I would just like to say thanks for being here, and I certainly appreciated your community-minded approach. And I think other groups in town could certainly take note on the thoughtful way that you've approached this. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go
Just,
ahead, Ron.
just a final comment to answer your question, Cindy. The sport has been around since 1965. And it is too much of a beast now to actually fail. I would stake my life on it. You know, that's sticking my neck out a long ways.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think you've already been sounds like involved in the master plan somewhat, but definitely connect with Willa on future sessions that could be coming up, because I think it's important to keep hearing that voice. Council, I don't know about a formal motion. I'm not sure, I think we'd have to probably get staff to bring us back a bit of information on what it would look like in order for them to work with you. If it's not a budget issue, then there's not an urgency to get something voted on now. It's just really a matter of how does staff work with the group to see if there's grant opportunities, if money can be raised, and then if there's a willingness to invest in the courts. Probably logically would be to ensure there's a need based on our facilities master's plan, although I'd be shocked if it didn't say more pickleball, just based on what's going on in the world. CAO?
Yeah, I don't think another report is needed. I think that staff will keep in touch with the pickleball folks, and we'll provide them with the donation way that we can start holding money. And when people that make donations can also get tax receipts. And I would concur with your thoughts. I was in the North Okanagan when Vernon had the seniors games and received large grants to make all the pickleball courts. And also was part of the indoor facility when that started under construction. And I know in Lethbridge, they were building 21 pickleball courts when I left. So it is a growing sport for sure. So I think you'll see that the master plan does reflect that.
Thank you. Yep, final
Can
comment?
I have it's actually a question back to council there. I was thinking about reaching out and I didn't have time to find out if Vernon had actually done, I know Victor, the mayor there, and I will talk to him, but I'm wondering if you've come across sort of an economic impact assessment of some of these, like the Western Canadian seems to be an obvious one to.
Through the chair, yeah, Victor Cummings has the full economic report.
Oh, good.
And it was Kevin Poole.
Yep.
He helped with it, and
Perfect.
yeah, it's all on their website. But I'm sure if you ask Victor, he proudly carries it around.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, perfect.
Thank you. Thanks very much for the presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll move on to FIFA 2026. Come on forward.
Hi, thank you, Mayor and Council. Thanks for having us. I am Terry Deacon, owner of Inio Employment Services, and this is
Abu Jahangir, and owner of AgroHope Farm just next door to City Corp.
and we have a PowerPoint presentation.
Event globally since 1930s. In 2026, the best FIFA 2026 friendly matches and cultural celebrations on Vancouver Island. A unique opportunity to showcase sports and culture. February 3rd, 2025, presented by Abu Jahangir and Terry Deacons. FIFA Men's Soccer World Cup, the most prestigious tournament, the most watched sporting event globally since 1930s. In 2026, the best 48 national teams in the world competing. FIFA 2022 in Qatar reached 5 billion viewers worldwide, known for legendary moments, top-tier talents, and uniting nations through the love of soccer. FIFA 2026 matches in Vancouver. 2026 FIFA will be co-hosted by Canada, USA, and Mexico. Vancouver will host 7 matches at BC Place Stadium. Matches will take place between June and July 2026, a historic moment for Canada showcasing world-class soccer and boosting tournament culture and local economy. Objective: organize a friendly match in Alberni Valley featuring Team Canada versus popular World Cup teams. Host year-long cultural and community activities, boost the local economy, and position Vancouver Island as a hub for sports and culture. Key components: friendly match in Alberni Valley. Feature star players to attract local and international audiences. Cultural showcases, indigenous-led performances, food festivals, and collaborations with local artists. Celebrate Vancouver Island's cultural richness. Community engagements. Youth soccer clinics, player meet and greets, and local involvement activities. Proposed timeline: 2025 Quarter 1. Secure approvals, finalize contracts, initiate marketing campaigns. 2025 Quarter 2. Launch promotional activities, engage the community and fundraising. 2026 Execute matches and associated activities. Economic impact: tourism boost, attract visitors to Vancouver Island and integrate Lower Mainland participation. Local businesses support, partnerships with vendor, sponsors, and indigenous communities to stimulate economic growth. Increase tourism. 10,000 to 15,000, and visitor spending estimated 1.5 to 2.25 million dollars. Temporary employment 300 to 450. Increased revenue for local businesses estimated 1.5 to 3.5 million dollars. Long-term tourism growth 10% to 15% annual increase in visitors and $5 million plus revenue for over 5 years. Culture and community engagement 5,000 to 8,000 attendance and $1.5 million in revenue. Total estimated economic impact 10 to 15 million dollars. Community collaborations. We already obtained First Nations government Hupachashad and Tishat First Nations already issued their letter of support. ACRD. ACRD nominated Harley Wiley into our committee. Alberni Athletic Soccer Club already joined with us. Community business. Alberni Valley News, Salvation Army, INEO, Agro Hope already in support. Request for collaborations from City of Port Alberni. We seek the City of Port Alberni's support for letter of support to facilitate partnerships and fundraising, intergovernmental connectivity, facilitate coordinations between province, Vancouver Island, and Lower Mainland stakeholders, event promotions, network to enhance visibility, participations, collaborate and participate all events. Conclusions. The initiative will place Alberni Valley and Vancouver Island on the global soccer map. It will celebrate cultural diversity while driving economic benefits. Your collaborations is crucial to making this vision a success. Thank you.
So almost nothing to say, I think. So we expect.
Do you want to talk into the microphone?
Oh, no worries. No, I think that we are covered. Like we can speak. The audience is small, so we can speak. No worries.
Yeah, so that people can hear who are watching.
Yeah, and obviously Terry is my mentor in Port Alberni, so that is beyond question. And to start the FIFA process, we reach out to BC Soccer Association initially, and then Cindy is the first person whom I contacted by text message. That whenever BC Soccer confirmed that nobody in Vancouver Island show up their interest in the making an arrangement for the international match, like the Team Gardner versus any other countries. So that is the beginning of the whole thing. And then Cindy replied Mike Fox to contact. I sent an email, and then he responded, and he connected to Pat Dickin, and then everything started, balls rolling. And so we are in several process we completed, and then we reach out to the First Nation bands. They also agreed with us to make a community vibe and the engagement. And then SCRD also sent us a representative. And we initially asked for that, okay, whether we can go for get an city liaison to be a part of the planning process. And then the proposal comes up, okay, send us a delegation and we can start discussing here. And if Councillor Haggard is here, thank you, because she is a good mentor, because she also encouraged about that whole process. She guided us as well, because she created some community vibes with the hockey, so that experience she shared. And she also mentioned some of the other the special persons who are experienced on the whole process in different games and activities, like the Ron Paulson. He is also with us right now in our committee. And so that is a summary, I think.
Yep. So if you have questions, we're happy to answer.
Thank you very much to both of you. Councillor Solda and then Councillor Mealy.
First of all, I really believe in cultural diversity as well as economic benefits. If something is going to come into our community and it brings all that, that's a positive for our community. And so I would like to know a couple of questions. First of all, I didn't see a date of the event that you have in mind. So that's number one question. And I'm learning not to ask 100 questions and then expect an answer. So I'll go one at a time.
Okay, so actually still the qualifying round is not finished in the globally. So we are waiting for the qualifying results. But BC Soccer, they will be visiting us on 3rd March. Thank you, Uida, because she already allocate us the Eco Field House for the sessions for the BC Soccer Association delegations, because they will be visiting us and sit with us as a community. And so that match will be definitely in June to July 2026.
Yeah,
So in between the time slot, because we are expecting maybe if Brazil, Argentina, or something some country like those, they are playing in the Vancouver, we'll try to take a slot from them.
Okay, excellent on that. I'm glad you said 2026 because I thought 2025, wow, you've got a lot on the plate there. So the next one is you're looking at the event throughout the community. In different venues and areas of the community. Okay, so I assume that. So my next big one is where's the initial funding coming in? What would you like from the city other than the letter of support? What are we asking?
Actually, we need to assess the capacity of Port Alberni initially, because we already asked some information. We already provided. If no infrastructure development is needed in that case, we don't need anything right now. But because there will be sponsorship, because it's a economic activities. And if you ask me, I'm not a sports person. I'm a just business person, simple. So we are try to create a vibe in the economy, in the whole Canada-wide, or the BC will be our target. It's not only Vancouver, because I'm connected with the Lower Mainland, so we are also contacting each other, so that because we will be needing letter of support also, intergovernmental connectivity through EU, because we need to work together. And because if I'm not wrong, that total the province and federal budget for the Vancouver 7 events is $583 million. So that is a provincial budget, the grants. But if city needs any infrastructure development, we can work together for the infrastructural supports from grab the grants from them. We don't need any support right now, that we think.
Okay, thank you. And I think you're working with a great mentor, hey, Terry, and who will help along that line, that path. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the delegation. Really appreciate it. I'm intrigued, I'll admit, because sports, and although I will say I'm not a football guy per se, but I am a sports guy. And this community's had great history over the years. And I'm not even sure if it's still the case anymore, but we were the first community to ever host the four major games for the province. We've hosted Sweden versus Canada women's national teams. We've hosted Team Kazakhstan pre-Olympic qualifier. So we've done a lot, which is great. And so I can see this kind of right up that alley. I'm looking at the match schedule for Vancouver. So their first matches group starts on June 13th, and the last would be the round 16 of July 7th. But would these games, these invites be for before that, much like Team Kazakhstan came before the 2010 Olympics? So we would be talking about May, early June, is that kind of 2026?
That's kind of the hope and the idea. And when the BC Soccer Association comes to Port Alberni, then we'll have a bit better of an idea of what we will be able to ask for and what they can support.
Sorry, one more, Madam Mayor. And then I guess the venue itself would be Bob Daly Stadium, I would assume, or are we talking about somewhere else in the community?
Our hope is Bob Daly. Yeah, our hope is that because it would probably be the biggest to accommodate the most number of people.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Councillor Patola.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I think this is a very intriguing idea. I'm wondering if you have had so far, I know part of what you're looking for is connections and collaborative support. I'm wondering if you've had any contact with the tourism arts and whatever the rest of it stands for, tax with the provincial government, or any conversations with Soccer Canada or the World Cup group themselves as to licensing fees or restrictions on playing during certain time periods around the tournament?
So that's a great question. And BC Soccer Association is the one that we're working with because they're the ones that are helping to host it in Vancouver. So they would be the ones to say yes or no. Would they be interested in collaborating with us? And they are interested because, like Abu said, nobody else on Vancouver Island has asked for this yet. So if we get our ask in now, and so what we want is for the city to support it in nature so that we can move forward with the planning. And then we will know more about when it will be, how much it will cost, how much funds do we have to raise, can we get some grants? Because there is a lot of grant money available to support this whole thing happening in Vancouver. And then we can tap into some of that. We've talked to Community Futures. We're trying to get a grant, help them grant proposal for a coordinator so that it wouldn't fall on any one person, any volunteer, because it's going to be a lot of work to coordinate and put together.
Thank you. I would love to see us make a motion just for support in principle as a start, and Councillor Mealy's going to make it right after I stop talking. I just would like to, I think, express my only concern. I think that this is an incredible initiative. I know the community has absolutely the potential to host this type of event. We've done it over and over, you know, maybe not at this level, but some really incredible events related to sports. And I think that's what Port Alberni really does best in a way. I just really look at where our budget is at and where it's at now, certainly where it's going to be at over the next, you know, for next year as well. And I recognize there's not an ask at this point, but I feel really leery of supporting something that feels like it comes with an ask for next year, because the reality is there's going to need to be improvements made. And I know that there's grant money out there. I know there's a lot of it, but I'm nervous to allow us to go too far forward with sort of an expectation that ultimately the city will end up funding it, because as much as I think there was a place in time where we absolutely would have, I don't think it's this year and I don't think it's next year. So I really want to support this. It's just, I want to feel some level of confidence that it really will be an initiative to move forward with grants and fundraising, et cetera, because it would be a shame for this to build up excitement and then us not be able to do it because of the current challenges we have with our budget. Go ahead, Terry, if you want to comment.
I do want to comment. And that is totally fair, and we get that. And we know that it's a really tough budget year for everything in the city right now. And I am in favor of all sorts of, I better not speak too loudly.
Yeah.
However, I understand the ask, and we don't, at this point, are not asking for anything financial, and hopefully we don't have to. Hopefully it will be in-kind, some kind of in-kind donations that the city can support, and it won't cost the taxpayers any more money.
Thank you, and I know that we can pull together and make it happen. Our community has done lots of things like this before, and it definitely takes dedicated volunteers. So thank you. Councillor Mealy.
Before making a motion, can I say something? Sure. Just make the time, note it, maybe because it's in history. It can be history because this is the first time in the Canadian soil the World Cup soccer is going to happen. And like that, such a international match, that would be first time in the Port Alberni.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'll move that the Committee of the Whole recommend council provide a letter of support in principle for this initiative.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. Seeing no additional comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, and moving on, unfinished business, we have the 5-year financial plan Q&A summary. Oh, thank you. Sorry, go ahead. We're not at that point of the agenda yet, but I'll let you know when we get to it. Thank you. Okay, so 5-year financial plan Q&A. Before I pass it over to our Director of Finance, I did just want to, I think, clarify some questions that we had from the public since our agenda came out for this meeting. And I'm not sure if members of council heard from members of the public as well, but we have been by practice, not by any kind of policy, but just in an attempt to answer as many questions from the public as possible. We have been adding questions from the public to our 5-year financial plan Q&A document. We have stopped doing that for the time being, and the reason for that is, as I think we know one piece of it, we have a overtime ban right now, which is putting additional pressure on our exempt staff to fill in and keep everything going as we are all working together to move forward. But we're getting a lot of questions from members of the public, and a lot of them are quite time consuming for our staff to be able to provide answers to. The CAO and I talked about this a few days ago and really just determined that until we get to a point where we can more easily answer the level of questions that we're getting, with other things going on, we will make this document for council questions. If a member of council would like to add a public question to the Q&A, by all means, we can do that at any point in time we'd like. But I think we were getting to a point where council's questions were not, staff didn't have the capacity to answer council's questions. And council is on a tight time constriction to be able to get the information that we need to pass the budget, make informed decisions. So I really want to prioritize council's questions being answered. If, as we all read through our correspondence from members of the public, or a member of the public gets up and asks a question at a meeting and we say, let's add that to the Q&A, council can certainly do that. Of course, by making a motion, passing it, and getting that added to the Q&A. But I just want to really make sure that our staff have the resources and time available to be able to answer all of the questions for council in a timely fashion. So if there's any questions on that, we can certainly take them. We can change that. But I just wanted to really be respectful of staff's time, as we are just in a kind of a different time than normal. Okay, seeing none, I'll pass it over to our Director of Finance. If there's anything you want to highlight on this document.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe that we've added the response to the January 14th question that the committee had. So hopefully that achieves the intent on that one. And then a few of the other ones, obviously we will be bringing forward reports on our actuals. So last Friday, we actually closed our year end. So that's the first opportunity to start to review and make sure that everything's in order for our annual audit and of course reporting out. So we'll take the time to report out on some of the larger projects and provide any details that might support that understanding of each capital project that we've had. So with that, if the committee has any further questions that they'd like to request, we could discuss that or put those on the Q&A.
Thank you very much. Councillor Solda.
Just a quick one. I already gave the heads up here regarding the snow removal budget. Just a breakdown, if we can get a breakdown of staff time, how much it costs for, is it brine that we use? And just break it all down so we can see it. It's not just going to wherever. I'm just kind of curious to know more of a breakdown. See you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. We had a chance to look into your question, and thanks for giving us that in advance. It's roughly a 50-50 split. If you'd like more details on what's all involved, we can provide that. Some of it may be needed to be provided in camera.
So just another thing, Madam Mayor. When, I know we don't always use it all, and what happens, because we might have one day of snow and that's it. And so what happens to the budget? It goes back into general fund, and then we just rebudget, just so the public understands where it's going after if we don't use it all?
Madam Chair, so I think the committee needs to realize that we have allocated full-time hours to each line item in that financial plan. There is some component of overtime that's actually incurred for snow removal when it's required, but a lot of the time is spent in prepping, brining in prep before the weekend, before the end of day, so that we're prepared and the crews go and do their best prep work. So all those hours are assigned to snow and ice removal in the budget. We've underutilized those funds in the past couple years, but on average, we were in that between, I think it was 169 in 2022 when we had this question brought up, but you know, we spend around that. But if it's not utilized, it's used in other areas. So staff would be doing other work within Public Works to use those funds besides the overtime that's incurred. So, you know, if it's not used, that will go into the surplus calculation for the year.
Oops, I didn't turn this off. Thank you very much. There's a lot of new people in our community. They don't understand where the money's going and how it works, and I think it's really important to bring it out. And I know you brought it back to us in 2022, but it's really important, and thank you very much for that report.
Thank you. Any other questions? CAO, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify for council and the public that we do allocate, as the Director of Finance has said, staff time across all areas. So that's why in certain areas, let's say we're talking about roads and drainage, if one area is below in budget, usually you'll see another above. And that's because we are so close on wages. It's the full-time hours that we actually use. Now, there is a little bit of leeway in there for the overtime hours, but there's the way that the municipality has been budgeting and keeps on budgeting, it's fine tuning that number. So sometimes you will see variances from year to year on the amount of staff positions that are empty. So even in this year's budget last year, we haven't been able to fill several positions. When we are able to fill those positions, you will see an increase in the budget. So this year we are budgeting to hopefully have a successful collective agreement. And once those positions are filled, you will see that fulfilled in the budget. So we do try and even do down to the quarter of a year with scheduling time for staff.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you to management staff for being out in the plows, and I believe it was management staff, and no overtime was paid. And I just want to say thank you for the work well done. And I know some haven't been out in the trucks for a long time, and it was good that the City Works crew were out this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Would somebody like to move receipt of the Q&A? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And on to the 2025 to 2029 financial plan. Go ahead, Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So tonight we have a few of the recommendations to the committee to provide to council. So if there is some questions as far as the financial plan, we can further address those. But we've been reviewing how to present and change the presentation style of the financial plan, and tonight the financial plan includes the reserve and the allocated projects to those reserves over the past few years and moving into the future. So as we populate our master plan, we'll see further details on what reserves are being used for the projects, and there are going to be specific projects coming from those master plans. Tonight we have some IRF expenditures that we're recommending to the council to push forward into following years. And this is something that we do annually to ensure that we're getting full utilization of our equipment. And it's a practice that we've undertaken over the years, but tonight we have quite a significant number of ERF purchases that we are recommending to the committee to push forward. Those will be brought forward in the following years, and once again, we would undertake the same process. The impact on the reserve for the ERF is a benefit, so it's enabled us to make another year of contributions, review what we need to undertake, earn interest on that reserve. And the second recommendation from administration is to take the taxation that's currently scheduled for the 2 solid waste trucks and move that to the ERF. So that would support a $290,000 reduction in the taxation in 2025. Further, we've also had the asset management lease policy. So in 2024, 50% of our revenue from lease assets is going to a reserve now. So that enables us to undertake the capital renewal of those assets with that reserve. Now, the RCMP, we have about $160,000 each year that is received from the province and federal government for their share of the detachment costs. And if we take funds for the upgrades for the storage that's currently scheduled for $150,000, we could move that from taxation also. So taking those two items from reserves, which we've talked about at length here, but this is the purpose of this is in alignment with the intent of those reserves. So I think it's good practice, and now that we can see that we've had the deferral of the ERF and we can utilize some of the lease revenue that we normally would just have in general revenue, this would also support a reduction of $150,000 for taxation in that regard. So that's provided to the committee for a recommendation tonight. Looking at the other components within the staff report, I did want to note that with our focus on ensuring that we have the clarity on each cost of facility or service delivery, looking at the different components of insurance, we currently just put everything as far as our property insurance coverage through administration. So that reflects quite a significant cost in administration that is recovered through the admin recovery that we have. So it's an in and out, but it's not clear enough for the committee and council to understand what a cost of a facility is. So when we look at the Industrial Heritage Center and the curling rink, we spend about $17,000 on insurance for that facility annually. And that wasn't reflected in the cost of that line item in the financial plan. We're looking at the train station, Cedarwood School, Roland Arts Center. Obviously, that's a higher value, so there's a higher cost for insurance now that the childcare center is in there. But we are receiving revenue for that, and we're going to bring forward changes in the display so that the committee and council will see clearly what the cost is for the facility. And this would be a no tax impact. It would just be allocating across the new accounts and removing that from the general administration costs. So with that, we do have the listing within the financial report that shows the changes that were made by council. Those are all listed in line items in each table, and that reflects the current rate of tax at 16.4%. So with that, these recommendations to the committee would bring that just below 15% as an overall tax increase. So provide opportunity now for the committee to provide any input.
Thank you very much. Before I pass it to the committee for questions, thank you for spending a bit of time detailing the process and kind of that we go through on our ERF vehicles. And just because something is due for replacement doesn't mean it automatically gets replaced. Management and staff do go through and look at the vehicles. I'm wondering if the fire hall is, if their vehicle requests are reviewed in the same way. And if that has been done for this year, as we did already approve one of their vehicle requests that I think some people on this council felt was a reasonably new vehicle. So are we evaluating all of our vehicles equally through the same process, or are we automatically putting some in and going through more of a review with others?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. So obviously with the Public Works assets, those are focused at that facility, and there's a lot of control over those assets at Public Works from the fleet manager. When it comes to working with the fire department, the fleet manager I know does do some work, but I can't answer the question that they've done the same review, but we can definitely follow up and confirm that for you.
Thank you. Go ahead, CEO.
Yeah, and just further to that, we are doing an internal review. When the fire department did say that that truck was due and council made the motion, we did ask our fleet manager to take a look at the vehicle to make sure that if we had other vehicles that were not of the same quality, that we may be able to utilize it in the fleet. If there's other questions or concerns from council, we can do further review.
Thank you. And I recognize we've already passed the motion to replace that vehicle, although I would like to see it utilized within the fleet if that's possible. But I think it's really important. This is something that kind of came to information that I wasn't aware of recently. And I think it's really important that we ensure that all departments of the city are having their assets replaced following the same process and being evaluated alongside all other departments in a fair and equitable way. And I think just by nature of how the fire hall operates, it is independent in some ways. But I want to make sure that because of that independence, we don't end up replacing vehicles there that haven't necessarily been compared in importance or condition to the rest of our vehicles. So I just really want to make sure that we have that kind of fair and transparent process for equally across the whole fleet that the city owns, and the fire hall is obviously included in that. So ideally, before it's brought forward to council, the fleet manager would have already reviewed and not reviewed after. So that's something I'd definitely like to see us shift as we go forward in the future. And if there is anything that the fleet manager, wants to flag that they think it can be pushed off a couple of years, even though council has given approval, I would hope that we would get that information. Yeah.
I will report back right after we talk with the fleet manager and he analyzes the truck.
Thank you very much. Okay, questions from council. Councillor Patola and then Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And following up on your comment with regards to that specific vehicle, this comment is generic and future-oriented. So I would think that council could benefit, I know I could benefit, from having a report prepared similar to our building facilities condition report. That would be a asset condition report. I know, so we're probably talking about equipment in that type of venue. And I know that we are certainly doing our GIS work on pipes and hydrants and other things. I don't know if maybe the vehicles and equipment falls into that or would be separate from that, but certainly it's an approach we're taking with many things. We should probably just take them with all things, and that'd be very helpful. I particularly sometimes am concerned that I don't know if a vehicle doesn't need replacing or does need replacing but is being pushed off just because it's going to have an effect on the budget. And so to make the best choices, when I have to make a choice, I'd like to know those things.
Thank you. CAO.
Thank you, and through the chair, I agree with the approach council's taking. We have started to try and make sure that each vehicle is itemized, at least in the 5-year, it was our goal this year. But we will build that out into the future too, hopefully looking about a 10-year horizon. But we could also itemize the ones that are still in the fleet and in good shape, so council has a good understanding of the full fleet and where things are on the life cycle. It was an oversight on myself for not really, I was really focused in on the fleet, but not on the fire hall and not the apparatus, but the actual duty trucks that are the 4x4 in nature, or the trucks the deputy or the fire inspector drive, or the chief. So I wasn't as focused in on those, more the rest of the fleet. And I also would like to ensure council that if a vehicle needs to be replaced, we would leave it on for replacement. That is why we have pushed a couple along, many for the last couple of years. Our mechanics and do a really good job on maintaining our fleet. So that does extend the life of the vehicles with the ongoing preventative maintenance. So I have to say that city crews do a magnificent job of looking after our fleet, enabling us to push so many forward in the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely not intended to be a comment about, you having an oversight in any way. I think just it really does for me highlight the discrepancy in process that we have within the general fleet versus currently at the fire hall. So I think it is really important that all of our city purchases follow the same process. So, just like our purchasing policy and everything else that we do, we have a process for it, so that when council is faced with a decision, we're making it looking at all of the needs and fully understanding all of the needs of the organization. So thanks for that. Councillor Mealy and then Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I agree with your comments and Council Bertolo's comments as well, just ensuring that we have the right information. So I'm just going to ask some questions, and if that's okay. The 2015 Ventrac mower number 609, is that an independent mower, or is that a flail mower attachment for one of the backhoes? Do we know that? Sorry.
I'm not sure. I would have to bring back that information.
It looks like we have somebody who does know.
Willa does. Okay, great.
Sorry, come on forward, Willa.
Madam Chair, the Ventrac is an independent mower, so it is not an attachment for a different apparatus.
Thank you. And the other question would be for the other vehicle, the 2014 Tacoma. It's a 2014, and I guess just the question is how many kilometers are on it, and the reason why we're replacing it in 10, 11 years. It's a Tacoma. I'm not saying anything about a Toyota, but other than a rusted frame, I'm not too sure that there would be an issue with this thing.
Madam Chair, I asked the same question, and when we do our review, the fleet manager made the recommendation that this would be an asset that we should renew. I can get further information and bring that back to the committee, but obviously we go through the process. We can bring further information to make sure that there's confidence in that recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 3 questions, if I may, Madam Chair. The first item, defer the following equipment. There's several items in there. By deferring these items to 2026, how is that going to affect the other items already scheduled for replacement in 2026, or will it have any effect at all?
Madam Chair, that's an excellent question. So when we look at that, obviously we'll go through the same process and see if we can push back further replacement and understanding that when the replacement value or the replacement date was set, these were based on the traditional lifetimes that these assets had. So if it's a passenger vehicle, we would say it's 13 years and then would come up for renewal. So, or if it's a piece of equipment such as the solid waste trucks, those are replaced every 6 years. So it's just in the IRF schedule, and we will definitely make sure that if there's life or we can extend them, we would.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Haggard.
Thank you. And for the second point, you were asking for additional funding from taxation to purchase the 2014 Trona and the 2015 Moore. Now, is that because there's not enough money in the IRF fund to put away to replace these two items? Or have the costs gone up, or is it a combination of both?
Madam Chair, we're recommending that we use the IRF fund for this based on us pushing back the purchases of so many. The prices have gone up, obviously. We've seen, over the last 5 years, we've seen significant increases over our planned increases for these assets. So we are starting to increase the contribution to IRF as we see some prices identified, so that it does bring up the values into the future. But with the items that we have in 2025, these are the ones that didn't have enough runway, essentially, to have the contributions to IRF increased. So.
Thank you. Councillor
Thank
Haggard,
you.
go ahead.
Yeah, my last question is item number 3, to fund the solid waste trucks and 2025 from the IRF fund. Why were these not already funded out of the IRF fund, or is this just excess that beyond what's in the IRF fund right now? Can you just clarify that, please?
Madam Chair, it's not that there's excess in the IRF fund, but we just have these purchases, a significant amount of purchases that we could delay, and then with the additional contribution in 2025, that gives us enough room in the IRF reserve to enable the purchases over the next 5 years and into the future. So we've just gone through a period of time where we had some large purchases that utilized IRF significantly with the aerial truck and the pumper truck in the past 5 years. So if we were going to plan and spend on the items that we identified over that period of time, we wouldn't have had enough money to make all the purchases. I think our IRF would have been under $1 million. And that, even though we don't have minimum balances in our IRF as far as a policy, administration felt that would be far too low as far as an IRF, and depending on where we were at. So obviously we're pushing these items out. We're not replacing them in the time that we planned. So that enabled us to have the additional runway with some increases to IRF over the lifetime of these assets. So just an additional contribution year, it just supports that. It's kind of a balancing act, Councillor Haggard, but that's the intent. So originally when we looked, that's why it was identified as taxation in 2025 when we looked at it last year. But we are seeing the contributions from the fees from solid waste support additional contributions into the IRF, and we're not replacing our garbage carts. I think that's another recommendation that we'll bring for 2026, because what we're doing is the carts are fine, we're just replacing them as we need them, and that might cost a little bit of staff time, but we are reusing these carts and fixing them as need be, rather than make a wholesale replacement of the garbage carts. So I hope that's helpful.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions from council? Councillor Patola.
Just voicing a concern. Of course, I think the directors clearly identified that this is a balancing act, and there's a target that would be a financially healthy amount in the IRF fund. I'm not sure how far away we are from that target, but I understand that it's being managed. And pushing off the purchase of a number of vehicles certainly has risk involved, since it's really impossible to know how much those purchase prices are going to go up and whether that is going to equal the amount of increase in their fund. I do have some concern given the topsy-turvy world of international finance at the moment, and a potential significant increases of at least 25% on vehicles that may be coming across the border, since most of these, except for the Volvo, most of these appear to be American companies. So in light of that, I would simply make a comment of my own concern that although it's a balancing act and nobody really has a magic 8 ball that works, there may be additional risks in the current environment that we're in now.
Yeah, it's a good comment, absolutely. Okay, other questions, comments? Okay, Councillor Mealy, would you like to make the motion? And I think you can make it all as one, and then if anybody does want to make amendments or have it broken down, that's their choice.
Sure thing, Madam Mayor. Move that the Committee of the Whole recommend Council amend the City of Port Alberni 2025-2029 Financial Plan Bylaw Number 5123, 2025 as follows. I defer the following equipment from the Equipment Replacement Reserve Fund in 2025 to 2026. A, replace 2008 Dodge Ram 3500 flat deck shop truck, number 150, 46,182. B, replace 2011 Freightliner asphalt patch truck 266, $415,000. Replace 2013 Volvo dump tandem axle number 267, $194,386. Replace 2005 John Deere loader 350, number 350, $288,285. Replace 2005 Volvo grader number 355, $306,818. Replace 1990 Britco office trailer number 369, $26,258. G, replace 1995 Bomag roller number 395, $60,696. H, replace 2004 Chevy 3500Q van used, number 616, $51,724. Replace replace 2006 Ford E350 15 passenger van, number 619, $62,016. And J, replace 2012 Chevy 3500 service truck, number 521, $77,681. And then add funding from Equipment Replacement Reserve Fund in 2025 for the following. A, replace 2014 Toyota Tacoma number 522, $50,470, additional funding of $24,830 for a new allocation of $75,300. B, replace the 2015 Ventrac mower number 609, $41,184, additional funding of $29,616 for a new allocation of $70,800. Utilize Equipment Replacement Reserve Fund to fund the solid waste trucks in 2025 rather than taxation for the amount of $290,880. And finally, utilize the lease asset management allocation in 2025 for the RCMP storage upgrades for $150,000 rather than taxation.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any further discussion on any pieces of this, or does anyone want to break them down and vote separately? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a hard time. Like, I understand and I do trust staff when they say that we need to replace 2 vehicles. I just have a hard time believing that we need to replace 2014 Toyota Tacoma right away. I mean, the mower, I understand that, but I would just like a little more information on those 2 vehicles. That's really what it is. Just a little more background on it.
For sure. So options are to remove those for now. So it would just be a motion to amend, and we would postpone those, or postpone them to our next meeting of council. Or if there's a comfort level, I would say that this is going to effectively be postponed to our next meeting of council anyways. So if council wanted to pass it as is, but also ask staff to bring forward additional information, and then we can vote on them separately at the next meeting of council. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's, rather than sever and do all that, I would just, we're going to be addressing this at the next council meeting anyways. So I think it's, as long as staff understands just a little more information on both those vehicles, that'd be great.
Thank you. And I'm seeing heads nodding on that. So if we can make sure just that we have even a verbal update, I think would be fantastic on the condition of those vehicles at the next council meeting. Okay, wonderful. On the motion then, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And Councillor Haggard, you can go ahead on tree planting now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would you like me to make the motion first, and if it's second, then I can speak to it?
Sure.
Okay. I would like to move to amend the 2025 to 2029 financial plan to include $79,590 for tree planting, and that these funds be taken from the Community Forest Reserve Fund.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? I'll second for Thanks. Seconded by Councillor Mealy. And I'll say I did not ask her to make this motion, but I do appreciate it. I'll let you speak to it, Councillor Haggard.
I just want to talk about the importance of trees in the community. Trees promote community. Trees can enhance a community sense of pride and ownership. Active involvement in tree planting programs leads to a stronger sense of community, environmental responsibility, and ethics. Trees cool cities. Trees contribute to urban cooling. Cities develop heat islands because dark roofs and pavement absorb solar energy and radiate it back to the atmosphere. Trees reduce energy cost. Urban tree canopy reduces the urban heat island effect, and the shading from trees reduces energy demands and the need for air conditioning. Trees can boost local economies. The presence of trees in neighborhoods can aid in economic development by increasing property values. Trees improve health. Research demonstrates that exposure to trees has a relaxing effect on humans, reducing stress and imparting a sense of well-being. Trees combat climate change. One tree can take in more than 1 ton of carbon dioxide in its lifetime. Planting trees and preventing deforestation are key measures reducing the human impact on global climate change. Trees clean air and water. Trees remove harmful pollution from air and forested watersheds and help clean our drinking water. Trees reduce flooding. Trees lessen the force of storms and reduce the amount of runoff into sewers, streams, and rivers, improving water quality and reducing flooding. So I did find that today, and just the importance of trees in our community. But I understand it's a difficult budget year, so I understand why council did take it out of taxation. But I think taking it out of the Community Forest Reserve Fund just makes sense. This will not only be a great gift from the Community Forest Reserve Fund, but it also is going to be a great legacy for the hard work that this organization does for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haggard. And yeah, really appreciate the intent to take it out of community forest. I think there's obviously a lot of alignment there, and it's a great source of non-tax revenue. I'll go to Councillor Solda and then Councillor Dame.
Well, you were bored at home, weren't you, when you were looking at that all up? I just wanted to throw that at her. But anyways, I actually was thinking of the community forest for some other things that we could, I don't know if they could come out of the community forest that I was going to bring up, but if you take that out of the community forest, you're going to take out what my thoughts were for something else. And I just think, like I'm looking at the rink boards, even if the community forest could put half in, I mean, we're looking at a $500,000 replacement there, and if they could put in half from the community forest, that would be great, and that would take away quite a bit for the, sorry, Madam Mayor, but, you know, like, I just look, that's a big, huge, coming out of taxation, and that would take our taxation down by half if we could take it out of there. So that was one of my thoughts.
Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very glad that Councillor Haggard has brought this forward, as it did bother me that despite making the motion initially to remove this from the budget, just due to the effort to lower our taxation this year, I do really think that this is an important thing, and I hope that it would come back sooner rather than later. And maybe I didn't consider this much sooner, but I do think that it's an excellent use of community forest funds and poetic almost. So yeah, I'll support this. Other than that, I am somewhat hesitant regarding the ongoing maintenance required for young trees to be planted, and I'd just like a better understanding of you know, what the staffing implications are for that and the service level implications are.
Thank you. I think that's a good question. Have we reduced our staffing parks maintenance budget in order to accommodate planting fewer trees, or is there no impact?
I can take my best crack at that one. I know that trees really aren't really self-sustaining until at least three years of watering. I think if we are planting trees, that coming out of the tree budget should be to irrigate them. And then at such time that they don't need irrigation, then that should be removed if possible, depending on where we are planting them. I don't think the operating budget has been increased to manually water trees. So in the budget, if we were to plant trees, that wouldn't necessarily mean that we would have more staff time to water the trees. So we would have to look at irrigating them. So in short, I think that's the quick answer. If depending on where they're being planted, we could I could bring back more information. I know that there was some plans until it was removed from the budget. There were some plans on locations to plant them, and we could bring back more information if there would be operating costs on an ongoing nature.
Could we maybe clarify from the Director of Parks, Recreation and Culture if the money that has been previously set aside for trees is for the purchase of trees only, or if it includes that work? Because I think in prior years, it was noted in a council meeting that it was staff time as well and not just the purchase of trees.
Madam Chair, those funds are typically used for both, so the purchase of trees and some of the maintenance. The committee will keep in mind, though, that further to the CAO's comment, that the maintenance over time, so of course there's going to be additional annual costs or staff time utilized over multiple years to ensure health and sustainability of those trees. So what I'm saying is the initial purchase may be less than that. So say that 79,000 is to purchase the trees and maintain them perhaps for that year. The committee will need to keep in mind that we're talking multiple years before those trees are able to sustain themselves.
Thank you. And I would imagine that staff has planned for that since this wasn't council's number, but rather a staff number.
Madam Chair, yes, I would agree with that.
Thank you. So the number should be the whole number in theory as it was in our budget. So, okay. Other comments, questions? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to, speaking in support of this motion, I would like to say, I am Groot.
Thank you, Councillor Patola. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, so I'm just kind of curious before I make a decision on my vote, right? I would like to know if we wanted to, for the rink boards, I'm just trying to cut that budget in half from taxation. Could we go to the community, the growing community fund for that? I'm not sure if we can utilize that or take some money from, I mean, 79,000 is already coming, if it came out of the community forest. So I just like to see if there's somewhere else we could take that money from instead of from taxation.
Could I just, I guess, further broaden out that question to ask how much is currently in the reserve for the community forest and how much is left? And I think we had a $150,000 dividend this year. I'm trying to remember, 150. So this would be about half of the dividend we received this year. But what's our total currently?
Madam Chair, the dividend this year was 300. So we had some commitments for 2024. And we had a balance of 906. After those commitments, it was approximately 321,000. And it's in the staff report as far as the financial plan. So those are the commitments that we currently have. And with the dividend and the interest, we have probably about just over 900,000 still sitting in that reserve.
Great, thank you. And just apologies to the Community Forest Board for all the work that they did in thinking their dividend was 150 this year and it was 300. Councillor Solda.
So we could take it out of the 250 out of the community forest if we wanted to, plus the trees. So, I mean, that unless it's earmarked for something else, I would like to see us do that because I just think it would bring down the taxation down a bit. So there's also the other one I'm looking at is the propane Zamboni, and we'll have more discussion on that, I'm sure, that I'll bring up. But I don't know if that's appropriate in that motion or a separate motion for that.
Thank you. I think they're reasonably separate, and so we could make them, I mean, council can certainly make an amendment and we can vote on that. I'll go to Councillor Haggard. You've got your hand up.
Thank you. I was just going to tell Councillor Solda the balance in the Community Forest Reserve Fund is $916,000 and $867, so there's certainly room for both, but we need the trees back in the budget. I think Mayor Minion's made a very good comment that if we take it out, it's never going to get put back in. Thank you.
And I would agree with you. I just remember how hard she wanted to get that in the budget to start with, so I remember that. And I just think also the rink board is a community project. It's for the community. The community is what goes to our Bulldog games and hockey games and that, and I think it's part of the community, and I think it's also a good fit for the community forest. I didn't ask for all of it, and because I didn't want to drain that particular the community forest, but if the two could go in, I would be very happy.
Thank you. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just on the motion as it sits now, I would be in favor of it at this point. I think there's a bit of a synergy there to have the trees, pay for the trees. Sorry, I'm not stealing that from anybody, but there is definitely a synergy there to have that, and there is enough money in there. I think Councillor Solda's idea is understandable. I think it's a separate issue at this point, but definitely. But just for the motion that's here, I think I'll support it.
Thank you. And Councillor Haggard, I think I couldn't agree more. And Councillor Mealy, the trees for the trees. When we cut down trees, we replace trees. I'm not sure why we didn't think of that funding source prior to this. But no, it does make a lot of sense. Not seeing any further comments on the motion. All in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. Councillor, yeah, absolutely. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I would like to take $250,000 out of the community forest to help mitigate for the rink boards. I don't know, however they want to wordsmith that.
Is there a seconder? I'll second. And discussion. I think you've already made comments. Any additional comments to make?
No.
Okay, other comments from council?
Oh, I do have one question.
Okay, Councillor Solda.
I just want to know what that would bring down in a percentage in the taxation for the public to realize?
Madam Chair, we just finalized the RFP for the work, and we've got some positive results. So maybe a recommendation of 50% of the cost would be recommended by staff
Sure, I'll
today.
do that as a friendly amendment, if that's okay with the seconder.
So, as I said, we just closed the RFP. We got a positive result. 250 would be under 1%. When we think about a 1% increase, it's about $310,000. That would be 1%. So this would be under that, but more to come.
Thank you. Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just wondering, I don't have a real good understanding of the what the Community Forest Fund has been used for in the past, and I was wondering if I could just, if there's something that is traditionally used for year after year, or if it's kind of all over the map and different all the time.
It's a fantastic question. So it is all over the map, though we do have a bylaw. So there is a bylaw that you can read. However, it's largely council's discretion, with the exception that it needs to be a project that is of benefit for the whole Alberni Valley. The first year the Community Forest Fund paid a dividend, I think was in like 2013 or 2014. And it was a number of small community grants that were given out, totaling about $300,000. So there was like 20 different small projects, like as low as a couple $1,000s and larger ones as well. And then there wasn't dividends for a few years, then we saved them for a few years, and most notably, we used about $2 million, or maybe 2.5 million even, I think it was 2 million, to purchase the SOMAS lands. So that's the largest contribution that's ever come out of the community forest grant, or the community forest reserve. And then last year we used it to offset some of the cost of projects, of course, that were to bring down taxation. But so it went from really small kind of community programs to no dividends for a short period of time, saving up to a very large project, and then more to infrastructure needs of the community. So it is council's discretion, but we've had that since, so it's been just over 10 years since we've been receiving dividends. And I think it's been a incredible initiative for the city to be able to have a community forest that we consistently draw in non-tax revenue from. Volunteers doing a lot of that work and really balancing the profit with building trails and recreation as well. And I'll just say that the new mandate letter for the new Minister of Forest has in it one of the initiatives that is a priority for the provincial government is to expand community forests. So I think we should all take note of that. It has been a fantastic non-tax revenue for us that's probably generated like close to $3 million or, just over. Not from taxation, volunteers doing the work, doing a fantastic job, building trails in the community. And if we could expand that, we could be further using it for large projects or even just bringing down taxation. Although I think it's not supposed to be used to just bring down taxation. It's supposed to be used for projects that are for the good of the entire valley. Thanks. Any other comments? Okay. So I think we have a motion basically to fund half of the rink board project from community forest rather than taxation. It was moved and seconded. Any further comments or questions on that? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? And carried, none opposed. Okay, thank you everyone for that. Any other 5-year financial plan related questions, comments, motions? Councillor Solda.
So, Madam Mayor, I'm not sure if this, I'm looking at the propane Zamboni. Do we need to replace it? What is the issue and how old is it? Could I just be refreshed on it before I have my thoughts here? Okay.
Yeah, Madam Chair, so this is an asset that was identified as something that needs to be replaced. In the past, we've bought an electric one. I think there is a desire by administration to maintain a propane one in the financial plan. But if we look back to the resolutions, and I do apologize, Madam Mayor, that I said that it was in 2018, but it was actually in 2014 that we made the resolution to pull the Zamboni out of the ERF, and it looks like the intent was based on the potential to electrify the fleet. So hence that was a recommendation at the time, understanding that there was carbon action funds that were available through grant and on our own contribution that we make annually. So it's identified as a unit that needs to be replaced, but if the committee would like further information, we can definitely bring that forward.
So, Madam Mayor, thank you. Here's my thought. The Zamboni is in the budget for $137,500, and I was looking, I'm not sure if it can come out of there. I was looking actually at the carbon fund, because there is money in there, that reserve, or there's also the Growing Community Fund, and I don't know if it can come out of there. There is money in both funds, and I'm just putting that on the table. I'm not sure, so.
CEO.
Yeah, thanks. I just, through the chair, I'd like to, I know that reserve funds are always a popular topic, and as we bring forward asset management plans and master plans that I know council is eager to receive, there will be highlights on our failing infrastructure. It would be administration's would advise to try and keep some of those reserves to pay off some of the infrastructure upcoming needs. So, as we look at all these, of course, we can take council's direction and draw down on those reserves. That will just be putting off to future where we won't be gaining interest on these reserves. But again, that's just a common place where I know in tough years that we do look to, but then we also have to replace them in years, which is part of actually this budget increase is actually trying to fund our reserves and put money back into them. So just a caution as we start to draw them down.
And could you speak to Councillor Solda's question, which was, is there the ability to fund it from the carbon reserve? And I assume that would be a no, given that we are not electrifying this, but
Correct.
maybe if we could just confirm.
Sorry, for the carbon, correct. And if you would like, I can bring up grant funding. If you'd like, I could bring up there, it'll allocate what has been allocated out of the funding and what is left.
No, I'm fine with that. I like reserves. I believe in reserves, so I agree with the community fund, because I know we're going to have some issues when we get all those master plans and reports back. And the carbon fund, I wasn't sure with that because it said propane, so I wasn't sure where I was going with that. But oh well, I saved 250, so it's okay.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other items, then we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is we need to make that motion. Okay, financial plan resolutions referred from the committee, or to the committee from the regular meeting on January 27th. Anyone want to speak to this?
Yeah, so Madam Chair, obviously with the review of the capital line items, the hand railing at the multiplex was referred to the committee to further discuss whether we could, take a different approach or defer. So it's back on the agenda for the committee's discussion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I still want us to put that railing in. I think it was reported that someone got hurt, and it's a safety issue, and I think it needs to go in, and we need to make sure it's there for people who need it. When I had surgery on my knees and that, I would have needed that, and I think it's important, so safety first.
Thank you. And Councillor Mealy, I think that you had spoken to there possibly being a local business.
Yeah, exactly, Madam Mayor. There's some Bulldogs fans and some local businesses that want to be involved in this, either for providing the parts or the railing or whatever. So I'd like to see it in just to give that time to have the chat with those people and see if it can be dropped down even further, just depending on who in the community can help out. So, but I would say yes through you to Councillor Solda. It's a safety issue. It's been ongoing for 20 years. You don't have a railing to go down any of those stairs unless it's section 100 or 106, which is the stairs directly towards the entrance. So. Yeah, so I'd like an opportunity to have the people, I'm not naming them right now, but people at the arena who've approached me to say, they could be a big part of this or help out in any way, and then see where it goes.
Thank you. Councillor Dame.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I had asked for clarification on this last time, and I think I know what it means, but I'm still feeling a little confused by the wording of the replacement of the multiplex handrail. This is a spot where there is no handrail, correct? So this isn't a replacement, this is an installation of a new handrail?
Correct, yes. Thank you. Okay. Would somebody like to make this motion? Sorry, I guess we just have to move it back we have to recommend it back to council if we want to. Councillor Mealy, did you want to do that? Or we could certainly just refer it to our next committee of the whole meeting if we want more information.
It's in the plans.
Yeah.
Oh, it's still in.
So, Madam Chair, it's still in the plan. I think it was the discussion that Councillor Mealy had, and then just, decision on whether to keep it in the plan or defer and find the alternate means.
Thank you. So no additional action needed right now?
If we want to keep it in.
Keep it in. Okay, wonderful. All right, then moving on, item number 3, we have, thank you very much to our Director of Finance. Parks and Public Places bylaw number 5121, 2024.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to remind the committee that this bylaw was initially adopted in 1981, and staff first presented a draft update to the committee on November 18th, and the committee provided some feedback to staff. And the question that circulated this evening around wording of a bylaw might seem vague or quite assertive. So a reminder to the committee that as a bylaw is indeed a type of law, the language used in bylaws is typically quite brusque and lacks warmth. The question around delegating authority that was brought up by the committee previously and a member of the public. So staff have reviewed all of the committee's feedback and have sought legal advice. So the corresponding language is reflected in the bylaw in front of you this evening. And on page 72 of the agenda package outlines locations where temporary shelters may not be erected. So all other public spaces would be available if the criteria outlined in the amenity areas on page 72 is met. So should council adopt the updated bylaw, staff would then generate a map of available locations and distribute that map to individuals requiring temporary shelter. So there's no guesswork by those needing that service to try to decipher the bylaw and that language and to determine those suitable locations that they could shelter temporarily. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions the committee has.
Thank you. Could you just first elaborate a little bit on shelter temporarily? And I know it is included, but just so that there's a lot of clarity to the community on what that actually means.
Yeah, so Madam Chair, as outlined in the bylaw there, so this is talking about sheltering temporarily. So if individuals in the community may be traveling, they may be unhoused, and they're in a situation where they may not be able to find other structures to reside in. Legally, guests or residents of a community may shelter temporarily. So this is why, as I've indicated there on page 72, sort of it describes the circumstances within folks may look to shelter. So this idea of community may not erect a tent or similar type tarp structure to reside in, that is incorrect. That is required by law for communities to provide residents and guests in a community.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I've got a number of questions and thoughts for the committee to ponder here. So maybe I'll just go through them one at a time if I could, rather than sort of all at once. First off, I very much appreciate this bylaw update. I think that this is very important and very timely, and especially I'm going to focus in on the section regarding temporary sheltering. And I have some concerns around some of the restrictions, and I understand that it's very necessary to have restrictions. We can't have this being a open free-for-all. But I also think that in trying to sort of say that there are areas where this can, under particular circumstances, take place, and by that I mean, the setting up of tents for overnight sheltering. I think that I just have some questions about the degree of some of these limitations. For instance, when we say that there is a list in here that of all the locations where it can't happen, and they are very reasonable, but then there's also restrictions, for instance, limiting there being any shelters erected within 10 meters of trails and sidewalks, and 20 meters of a whole list of things, including playgrounds, sports fields, washrooms, parking lots. And my thought is that that's quite a great distance. And if I think through most of the parks in town, even though we're saying that those parks are all allowable for temporary shelters, that restriction probably excludes most of them. And so just given the ongoing, I mean, this is very timely because there's a lawsuit taking place in Vancouver regarding, the human rights issue of limiting temporary shelters like this. And so I guess my question is, perhaps we could approach this from the other direction and ask, is there a map or a list of viable locations where these restrictions aren't so limiting that you could actually do this in if needed? So that's my first question: is there a map or a list of locations that would be allowable within the rather elaborate restrictions that are in place.
Thank you. I'll go to our director.
So, Madam Chair, as has been mentioned, that that map or list would be generated should council approve the bylaw. Secondly, a reminder to the committee that we have over 50 green spaces and parks in our community. So, again, the purpose of establishing a bylaw is to establish that level of control and understanding. So, so those that need to enforce a bylaw, those that are enjoying the bylaw itself, everyone's on the same page about what those expectations are. Of course, council, if they wish, could also make adjustments to those to the bylaw language itself as well. Again, we've been working with the committee feedback as well as legal counsel on, as Councillor Day mentioned, there's a variety of court cases happening currently, and so we're learning from all of those as well, and that's why we've been very prescriptive in the bylaw as well. So short answer is yes, staff can generate a map or a list if council wishes to review before first reading or throughout the process, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I appreciate that answer. And I should apologize. I did miss that you had mentioned that map could be generated. I was focused on trying to gather my thoughts for my questions here, and I must have missed that. So on the topic of the lawsuit that is taking place in Vancouver, I did read that their bylaw requires that anyone sheltering overnight be vacated by 8 a.m., and that's being challenged. And I noted that our proposed bylaw has 7 a.m. as the proposed vacating time, which I'm just curious if 8 a.m. is being challenged as being too cruel, too harsh, on somebody, a homeless person, then surely 7 a.m. Is even more so. And I'm just wondering what the basis for that is. And also, I would question, do we have bylaw staff that's even working at 7 a.m. to enforce such a rule? And if not, then maybe there's no purpose in having it that early to begin with.
Thank you. Director.
Madam Chair, so two answers to that. So first of all, times of day are typically referenced as opposed to back in the 1900s, we would have used phrases like dusk until dawn type of situation. I would also indicate as well that for everyone's awareness, to be clear as well that it may not just be the time of day that a lawsuit may be hung up on. It could be a variety of language in the bylaw as well. In regards to enforcement, so as was discussed at the November Committee of the Whole meeting around the ability to enforce. So enforcement, as staff have indicated before, is a last resort. So we are keen to work with residents and guests in the community rather than strictly enforcing. We'd prefer to take an approach where we educate and work with folks and service providers to provide a level of service for folks. So in the event that we needed to enforce, that's something we could absolutely chat with our folks in bylaw about. But I just wanted to remind the committee as well that we treat enforcement as our last resort.
Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also I appreciate that answer. I still continue to kind of wonder if we should be changing that time, but something for us to all consider. Next, I don't think that I saw any wording regarding like allowances for extreme weather situations. I'm not sure if that's something that we might want to include in there. And I guess I'll throw out a couple of questions at once here. I'm also wondering about the section on the prohibition of leaving belongings unattended. That would prohibit a person who had to use the washroom or go get food or any of these things. They wouldn't be able to, leave for a few minutes. And I'm wondering if that's unreasonable, if just in terms of a human rights issue. So I'll leave those two questions then for now.
Director Thorpe.
So, Madam Chair, I'd need a little more information about the first question around extreme weather. So typically, we would work with our local shelters. I guess I'm just not understanding what the question is regarding extreme weather. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. I can provide further insight on that. I'm referring to when we're dealing with like extreme freezing temperatures. Say it's -10 outside, and somebody has to be out by 7 a.m. So we're asking them while it's still dark and 6 a.m. in the morning, freezing cold, to be out packing up a tent. And hopefully nobody's out there in a tent in that temperature. And perhaps that's, what we really need to look at is how to, what to provide for people rather than a tent. But in the case that they are, I'm just wondering if it would be useful, helpful, meaningful to have language in there that allowed for certain situations where there was more flexibility.
So, Madam Chair, that's something absolutely we'd be happy to look into. If that's language that's included in other communities' bylaws, sure, we could look at that.
Thank you. Councillor Dame.
Thank you. And one final question, and then I do have a request of council, of the committee, is I'm wondering if we could just have a little bit further detail on what the consultation process was.
So, Madam Chair, again, seeking a little more information, consultation with whom?
Well, I guess that's my question is I'm wondering, were affected individuals consulted, disabled, Indigenous communities, that sort of thing? And I do apologize if I overlooked that information in the report.
So, Madam Chair, the approach staff took were to look at existing, of course, the existing bylaw that we have adopted here in Port Alberni, as well as a variety of other communities' bylaws as well, to look at best practice of what's current. Again, further to Councillor Dame's mention, since there's a variety of litigation current in town. Also, with the work in our public safety department as well, and folks that they've engaged in and continue to engage with on a regular basis, which includes our a variety of service providers as well. I wouldn't have the data on hand as far as how many specific individuals we had approached in updating the bylaw, though.
Thank you. And I think important to note that if this is, of course, committee of the whole, if council did want to gather further information from members of the public or service providers with more specific questions, we could certainly direct that. Councillor Dame, and then I have Councillor Mealy and Councillor Haggard and Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I do appreciate that I've taken quite a bit of time on this one. I just have one other thing to mention is that we do have an expert and advocate on this topic in the audience today, and I would appreciate if the committee was agreeable to it, if we could invite Alice Sam up at some point, just to share some thoughts in the discussion.
Absolutely. I'll go to council questions, and then once council has asked their questions, I'll ask council if everyone's okay with inviting Alice up. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I appreciate those comments from Councillor Dame, and I do, and I'm going to be asking a question about smoking pretty quick, but under Section 9, but under Section 9.9, it says temporary shelter, as permitted under subsection 12.4, must not contain any unattended campfire, lighted candles, propane lighters, or stoves, or other similar devices that would contravene the fire control bylaws. So I think that's just to kind of tag along with the conversation. It was -2 today, and there was a fire underneath one of our bridges to keep, and I'm going to assume it's to keep people warm. So it's something that just to keep an eye on, especially if there is a lawsuit elsewhere in the province. So, but my question would be on smoking through you to staff. So I read number 9. It says 9.5 is no person shall smoke in a public place or on a street unless that person is on a portion of sidewalk that is more than, and it goes 20 meters away from any park facility, which include public places such as beach, trails, playing fields. It goes on 7 meters from playgrounds, 7 meters from any intersection, crosswalk, transit shelter, or transit sign. So I guess the question is, or a customer service area, patio, door, window, or intake. So I'm not a smoker. I absolutely hate it when I go down into the main foyer area of the arena when there's a Dogs game going on and people are outside smoking and it wafts in. I don't hate smoking. I'm not a smoker and that's it. So, but when I read this, does this mean that there is no smoking on public facilities, including the arena or outside the arena, unless you're in a vehicle? I guess that's my main question here.
Director Thorpe.
So, Madam Chair, top of page 62, so 9.5 subsection C, when we talk about door, window, or air intake, so further to the question, so currently so there's already signage posted at our city facilities around the distance that folks need to be if they choose to participate in smoking. So it could be something where they need to move further away from that door air intake. In some communities, however, there's an absolute ban on smoking of any description of any substance in any public space whatsoever. So just to give committee, if the subsequent question is what are other communities doing, some have banned smoking entirely in any public location. So further to Councillor Mealy's mention, yes, those individuals in those communities would only be able to consume those substances inside their own vehicle or on their own personal property.
Thank you. Councillor Mealy.
Sorry, then, so just for the clarification for us, then, it's not a smoking ban, it's just, we're going to be looking at exactly how far away they are from doors and that. I just want to make sure, that's all it is.
Madam Chair, that is correct.
Thank you. I'm just bringing myself back to how hard it was to get smoking on playgrounds banned in this community 9 years ago. It wasn't even a real ban. It was just, let's put up a sign. It was very controversial at the time, so we've come a long way. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say that I think there needs to be stringent guidelines in this bylaw because we all know how quickly an encampment can grow and become something that we can handle. For example, my first term on council, first of all, there was one trailer on 4th Avenue. Next thing we know, there was a dozen trailers and it took us years to get rid of those trailers. And those people suffered for those time they're in there because it was not suitable housing. It took us a lot of staff time, a lot of council time, and a lot of money to find suitable housing. So because we allowed one, it grew to a lot, and it took us a long time to work through that. So we have to be very careful. And I'm not saying that I'm heartless. I have the biggest heart of anybody that I know. But we just have to be very careful. And as far as cold weather concerns, I don't think anybody, staff or council, would insist that somebody move along at 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning when it's -10 degrees. What we would probably do is refer them to one of our many emergency shelters, cold weather shelters that we have in our community. So we'd not be mean. That is not who we are. That's not what we do. What we do have to have guidelines because otherwise it could get us into real trouble. Thank you.
Yeah, agree with you certainly on the bylaw or on needing to have guidelines. And I think the fire one is I think a note that we almost need to have further discussion about. And I mean, this bylaw obviously is intended for where there are no other options. And I think today in our community, as services exist, it's pretty rare that there are no other options. There may not be options that that person feels is suitable for them. However, I think what we need to write this bylaw for, given how frequently it's changed, not that we will let it go 40 whatever years again, but I think it's easy to sort of assume that the services we have today will always be here. And I think we have to really remember that, like, the shelters that we have in our community, the extra cold weather funding that comes into our community could literally be gone next month, all of it, because all of those services are funded on an annual basis of grants. Mostly from provincial government. So, we're very fortunate right now, not that we have a bed for everyone all the time that is suitable to their unique needs, but we're very fortunate right now to typically generally have space, but that could literally be gone with a change of government, before the end of this term. So I think when we are when we are making these bylaw changes, we need to make the bylaw changes with that in mind, that we could find ourselves waking up in a community that has no shelters, cold weather, emergency funding left, I think, very easily. So, I've got Councillor Patola and then Councillor Solda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I remember when this first came through, I seemed to have a lot of suggestions. And I can say the second time it comes through, I have no suggestions. I have read this piece of legislation to be well thought out, very much encompassing of all the alternative actions that could be permitted or not permitted, and is reliable enough in its reading to be applied. I take some solace that this was reviewed with legal and is not just a creation of an individual that hasn't looked to the law as it exists and the current state of the law, including what challenges may be ongoing at this point in time. I think, not to try to teach, but the fact that there are challenges is the nature of law being an evolving entity. And as laws are written, they are written based on the best knowledge at that time. And then that knowledge and approach are challenged. That's the whole point of it, is challenged. And then we get another ruling that says either, yeah, you got it right, or no, you didn't get it right. Just the fact that it's being challenged is not instructive in and of itself. And should there be a legal decision that says this isn't right and 7 a.m., 8 a.m., or 9 a.m. are not appropriate, but it has to be 10:30, I'm quite confident that our administration will bring that back before council and review the law, review this bylaw so that it corresponds to the senior levels of legal decisions. So I am not concerned about the 7 a.m. being used at this point in time. I also would point out that specifics are necessary in any piece of legislation, whilst discretion still rests with enforcement officers, as probably we're all familiar with from our experiences in life. I think for me, the best one is when that one time I got pulled over for speeding and the officer did not exercise their discretion and gave me a ticket. But I know for a fact that other people get pulled over and don't get tickets, and that's the discretion. And I would certainly think that bylaw enforcement has a history of discretion already in the city, and certainly the graduated enforcement approach that our departments have been using until now, I expect would be continued. The reason for that discretion rests with the enforcement officer is because if discretion was in the legislation itself, it would be arbitrary. It would not provide a rule that people could follow. Therefore, there would be no rule. So it has to state specifics, not for the purposes of totalitarian adherence, but for the purposes of understanding and clarity. Does that mean that there's going to be significant penalties if you're 5 minutes late? Well, I doubt it. I doubt that it could come to that, simply because of the incremental process of enforcement. And even once you get to a higher body of decision making, there's still incremental enforcement. I'm sure there's many people in our community that complain that people that steal are not dealt with harshly enough. But that's the nature of the incremental enforcement of the judiciary, which is appropriate in our society. So I hear the concerns of fairness and empathy, and I share them. My only difference is that my opinion is this piece of legislation does approach those in a reasonable manner, subject to further instruction from greater minds than mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patola. Councillor Solda.
But we do recognize that there are people who do not want to go to shelters too, and that's really important to note that they will put up a tent or wherever they sleep at that time. I just want to put that out there in the public so there are people that just don't like the shelters. But anyways, or trust them. But what I want to also ask about, like I notice you've captured the majority, some of our parks, but like you said, there's 50 parks, right? What about Paper Mill Dam, River Road, and Dry Creek Park? I mean, are they not, should they be captured in this? Or because you did put actual drawings and that, so what about the rest of the parks?
So, Madam Chair, Schedule A on page 72 speaks to the prohibited locations. So the maps that are subsequent to that, those various schedules from page 73, onward, those are the prohibited spaces based on the criteria. So as far as the list of other parks, as I mentioned earlier, it would include all other parks would be available as long as they were meeting that criteria on the amenity areas in the middle of page 72.
Thank you. Okay. Not seeing any further hands. Would anyone like to read the motion as is or make any suggestions? Oh, sorry. That's right. Yes.
As Councillor Solda pointed out, there is a member in the audience that I think we may wish to hear from.
Wonderful. Yes, absolutely. And seeing nods from council, everyone is good with us inviting up Alice. Alice, come on forward if you would like to speak. And you can just turn on the microphone and introduce yourself so everyone knows who you are.
It's good. Klassisch Kwana Histakshit Houset. That's my Nechanic name. I am originally from a Houset, and I've been working under the wings of a Houset right now. We're working with our homeless in many cities, many capacities, and one of the things that I have done is gone to each city and done a number count. What are our percentages of Indigenous people versus percentages of housed members alone? And one of the things that the solutions that I did see in some of the cities is a gated community, a tented gated community. And in the one community that I looked at, upon entry, they receive a tent, a sleeping bag, and their necessities. And in that time, they're given almost like a hotel, where they're given till 11 a.m. to stay or whatever they have to do. To me, it seemed to work very well. Can Port Alberni not look at something like that to address or alleviate some of the problems that we're running into in Port Alberni? And also, like in the businesses, I'm sure the businesses would appreciate having somewhere for them to go besides 3rd Avenue and being right outside OPS all the time. It just, to me, it would make sense to have a community where they're treated as human. Like they're somebody's loved one. There's so many out there that it's not, they didn't choose. Nobody chooses to be homeless. Nobody chooses to be mentally challenged. Nobody chooses to be addicted. And some of these bylaws, I'm sorry, but some of them are just not gonna, as far as I can see, they're not gonna be feasible to our homeless population, simply because we're dealing with post-residential school and cultural generational, so I think one of the things we have to do is start addressing it in a human way, which would be to offer them somewhere besides saying there's 50 parks. If anything, that all that does is confuse people. Because they'll go down to Dry Creek and they have a mandate of being so far from so far, you know? And I honestly, as a worker, wouldn't understand that. I'm a support worker, and I wouldn't understand that. So you're asking people who have very limited basic living skills to understand a bylaw that's this long. It's just not gonna happen. So I would like to ask Port Alberni to consider doing something on the lines of a gated, tented community. I have approached other outlets to at least fund some of the equipment. And I do have a balance waiting to fund some of the equipment if and when we can find a place that would help take them off the corners, off behind the buildings, and out of the residential areas. I think that's one of the most important things, and help the businesses that are struggling with them sitting, taking over their little spots or whatever. That's so I was here to ask Port Alberni to consider that. And ask Port Alberni to consider having a committee that just addresses homelessness. So I used to sit on the Victoria Homelessness Coalition in Victoria, and they have actually just a committee. That's what they deal with, is the people in the community and the people that are homeless. And they have people that actually go and discuss with our homeless population what would work, how would it work, what's missing. Those are some of the questions that we need to be asking. What's missing? Like, how can we support, how can we alleviate some of the unnecessary violence and, things like that. If you would consider having those kind of things. So one would be the committee with possibly one paid position, and another would be a gated community where the entrance is open on one side and they're supplied with a tent and a sleeping bag, and they're treated like humans. And realizing that, again, that bylaws apply to us. We're the only ones that are going to be able to understand, because we're dealing with a lot of people that are struggling with addiction, mental health, and no basic living skills. So I'd like you to consider that when you're presenting this mile-long bylaw that, even my reading it, I'm having a hard time understanding a lot of the stuff, and who was consulted in coming up with these bylaws. Chu?
Thank you very much, Alice, for speaking today and for taking the time to be here. And thanks for those suggestions. We've actually never officially talked about a tent site, but I know that BC Housing actually has started some conversations in the community, and so it may be something that council wants to get formally involved in the conversations around. I think a committee specifically around homelessness in the community is an excellent idea. I'm not sure if that would be best led by the city or another organization, but I think that's something that our council will absolutely have some discussion around as a starting point. To see what we could do. I think it's a great idea. And I just did want to note that to your comments about the bylaw, our staff did recognize that we even read through the bylaw and go, okay, well, where does this leave us? So our staff had talked about the idea of specifically printing off a map to give to people of where camping would be permitted. Certainly not expecting anyone to go straight to the bylaw, read through it to understand, but rather going to support workers with information and a map that's easily readable so that people have the information in a way that works. So yeah, thank you very much for the suggestions. Councillor Dame, did you have a comment?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll just say really quick that I don't have any motions prepared for this meeting, but I will likely bring something to the public meeting where this is on the agenda again, and I'll try to distribute it ahead of time.
Absolutely, thank you. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Clayco, for coming. Appreciate it. Just on that comment for the BC Housing, if there is something going on, absolutely we should be at the table. If it's going to be in the community, if it's a tent site of some sort, it's probably going to be on a city park. So I believe, and if it's not, we should still be part of that process. So I believe we should be in that process right now.
Thank you, and I don't want to mislead to suggest that there is something currently going on. I just know that BC Housing has offered it as a potential short-term solution in other committees and discussions that I've heard in the community. So I know that it's something that they have suggested has worked in other areas, and that could be something for consideration here. If we could certainly reach out to BC Housing as a starting point to see if they've actually done any work for this concept in our community, or if they have funding as well. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, just on the BC Housing Initiative, we have been involved in conversations. We have said if they have funding and they're looking for a spot, then we would be a willing partner. That's sort of where it stopped. It was driven by one member in the BC Housing team. So we did hear a little bit before UBCM, and then at UBCM we did have the discussions. It is known that you do need to make sure that a site such as a fenced off area that is allowed for shelter needs to have staffing, needs to have the right resources at the site. So again, it comes back to that resourcing questions and where does that fall into? And I believe that's what BC Housing was working through with several of the other ministries that are also involved. If council wishes, of course, we can always get more active and push to see what's happening, and also council could bring it up at AVICC or UBCM if they wanted to.
Thank you. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to make the motion that the Committee of the Whole recommend Council introduce and complete 3 readings of the Parks and Public Places Bylaw number 5121, 2024.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any further discussion? Councillor Mealy and then Councillor Dame.
Sorry, just on a timeline, so just for everybody in the public and online, so this is going to go to council, then we're going to have the 3 readings and then final adoption at another meeting. So there's time here. I just want to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like Councillor Dame might bring forward something to when it does come to council. So yes, but thanks for calling that out. So there's, whatever council meeting it will come to, and then an additional period between when it would be passed with potential changes to be made to it if council determined. Okay, seeing no further comments on the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carried. Thank you, and thanks Alice for being here to speak today. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So now that motion is dealt with, just a further follow-up comment, which is, let me pound the table again to encourage council to attend the BC Not-for-Profit Housing Association Conference that's in November in Vancouver. It is a preeminent conference on housing. And I know that not a lot of people jumped at the opportunity for probably a lot of reasons. It's in November. But if any members of council feel that they would like to or need to learn more about housing, including tent encampments, that's the place to go. So I'll just make that plug.
Thank you. I think we did approve maybe myself and one councillor to go. I'm not sure if it was Tom. Tom was Kofi. I can't remember, but I know that we did, I think we did preliminarily address it. Yeah, thank you. A placeholder, that's right, yeah. So, but you're right, I think it is important. And I'm gonna make an effort to go this year. Okay.
Maybe it's you and I.
Might be. Okay, continuing on in our agenda, we have no staff reports, no correspondence. Item H, new business, and item number 1 is code of conduct.
Thank you, Chair Minions. So this item is coming forward from the December 9th regular meeting where staff provided Council's Code of Conduct policy with some suggestions for some amendments. And so it was requested that it be brought back to a committee of the whole for further discussion. And so that is what we have done.
Thank you very much. Discussion. Councillor Patola.
Strangely, I'm not really in support of any amendments at this point in time. I'm quite happy that we did pass a code of conduct, and we did so early in our term. I do think that they're important, and they certainly are required by law. But the code of conduct that we have now was one arrived at by council with deliberation. There is a requirement to readdress the issue subsequent to the next election. So it certainly isn't something that just will go by the wayside, and a new council will not be bound by these ones. The new council will have to make up their own terms of reference, as it were. The reason that I am opposed to establishing clear behavioral guidelines is because I simply don't think it can be done. And although the concept of having everybody play nice in the sandbox, as it were, is one I very much support, I think that there is very little we can do to clarify the legislative requirements we're currently under already. And to do so would potentially lead to nitpicking and I guess just distraction from the issues at hand. I see that human behavior in media and social media displays to me that people quite quickly get off topic of whatever point is trying to be made and focus on a tone that may or may not be perceived in a written communication or a specific assertion by somebody else or derogatory wording, and we get way off from the point that's being discussed. This council, and it might be just particular to this council, but this council seems to discuss the issues fairly civilly and focused on doing or attaining an objective for the benefit of the people of the city, as opposed to our personal preferences or our own egos. And I'm very comfortable with the way this council works in that way. And so I would be opposed to changing anything at this point in time, and I think it can be left to the next council to address the issue. But those are just my thoughts.
Thank you for your comments. Other discussion? Would anyone like to make the motion or a different motion? And if we don't wish to make any changes, then no motion is required at this time. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Option 2 is that council accept the council code of conduct policy review as information, and I would make that motion.
Moved by Councillor Mealy. Seconded by Councillor Patola. Any discussion? I will just say that I think that the recommendations that came forward with reason for best practice, what we're seeing in other communities, and I personally have no issue or concern with implementing the best practice recommendations. I think it's really important to note, though, that, you know, as Councillor Patola has said, we work excellently together. And I think we encourage, you know, everyone to speak their mind in a comfortable way, and we're able to do that, disagree, and move forward. I think that we work as a council should work, and I'm really proud of that. Code of conducts are meant for when things break down, and as we know, that can happen on any council. You know, obviously, the further you move forward working together, the less likely that is. And I think we've all got a great working relationship together, and a new councillor who has been contributing in a really fantastic way to that as well. So I feel really comfortable with where we're at. However, I think that this could certainly be brought back to council if anyone chose, because I certainly in no way offended by the updates to it either, and I think they're prudent and in good practice. So, Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would heartily agree that I have no issue with updating this and creating a code of conduct that is best practice. I totally agree with your comments. I think it's just not an immediate priority for me, and I'm very happy to sort of hear out the rest of council and sort of I guess go along with what everybody feels is best right now. And as you said, perhaps this is something we revisit when we don't have so many other competing priorities and pressing concerns. So I think this is a good thing. I don't know if this is an immediate pressing concern. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think well said. Councillor Solda.
I think we're fine as a council, but when you look at other councils not here necessarily in the city of Port Alberni, but I'm talking about other councils that are they have such a poison environment amongst themselves and stuff like that, and how bad it is, where a mayor is getting using his own business as his office, or he can't vote, or a counselor is ostracized for some reason outside. And I just think it's just a protection for future councils. The world has changed so much, and councils have changed so much, and I'm not just, so I have no problem waiting or anything like that, but it's also protecting the future. And of course, this document can be changed through different counselors and councils and stuff like that. So that's what I'm looking at. But I'm fine the way it is too, so I'm okay.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. Thank you. And Councillor Solda has to go. Thank you. All right, moving on the agenda to Alberni Valley Restorative Justice Society, and we have a motion put forward, and information by Councillor Haggard. So Councillor Haggard, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to give you a brief background, I first met Alex Glassy. He is the president of the Restorative Justice Society at a community action team meeting. Alex asked to meet over coffee so he could tell me more about the Restorative Justice Society. His passion, dedication, and commitment to the restorative justice and restorative practices won me over, and I became a supporter of the organization. This organization gets results. We often talk of saving Port Alberni one person at a time. This organization does exactly that. It reunites families and reunites people to their community. I've heard many stories of the positive results this practice has had on their lives, but their hard work and success has stretched their very limited resources. For example, since their AGM held in December, they've had more referrals than they had for all of 2024. They are a victim of their own success. The Restorative Justice Society has applied for several grants, and they're hopeful that they will be approved. However, they need some short-term financial assistance. They are also looking for in-kind contributions for office space and the limited use of Echo Field House. And I invited Alex to be here tonight in case there is any questions that I may not be able to answer. So they have asked for a total of $39,500. However, I have taken that down to $20,000 to make it more appealing to get approved. And I've suggested it comes out of the RSMP surplus fund. And if you look on page 46, there is a line item that says interest, and it has a balance of $36,000. Perhaps we could take that short-term funding there, so it would not affect any taxation. And the other two items would be of office space, and the use of Echo Fieldhouse would be in-kind contributions. Is there any questions from council that I can try and answer?
Thank you, Councillor Haggard. Any questions or comments?
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Restorative justice as a general term, is a fantastic approach to resolving issues between conflicted members of the community. And certainly the important part of it is it avoids court proceedings. I'm loath to say unnecessary court proceedings because I think once you're in court, it's because it is necessary. I am very concerned that this is a society that has been around in Port Alberni for at least 20 years. It's not a new thing, but suddenly there's a new need. And I have not seen in any of the materials any discussion or indication of what that new need is. I don't even want to assume what it is. I have participated in restorative justice, also known by other terms such as diversion or alternate measures. It's certainly a concept that has been utilized in the justice system, the criminal justice system, for many years, which is why that society has been in Port Alberni for 20 years. I, though, recognize that corrective services, BC Corrections, court services, and grants provided for alternative measures through the Law Foundation are areas administered by the province in no different way than ambulance services are administered by the province, not the city. I would be loath to enter yet another area of provincial jurisdiction and spend tax dollars that have already been spent in provincial taxation to support a service that the provincial government is not properly supporting. There is other grant funding available, but to follow the proposed motions would essentially be once again an about face on the stated objectives of this council, which is fair market rate rents for all properties, which is finding ways to cut back on spending in provincial areas of jurisdiction. And so these motions would counteract those objectives. I stopped short of saying policies because I'm not sure that we do have policies specifically that way, and I recognize that this council has taken the approach of dealing with issues as they're raised on an individual approach. But having said that, there's a kind of a general rule, thumb, or application that, in my opinion and my observation, it seems like this council is tending towards. So for those reasons, although I believe restorative justice is very effective, I don't believe the city should be entering into that jurisdiction, which is provincial. I don't think the city should be financing restorative justice for the entire valley because it's not limited to the boundaries of the city. I have some concerns over the support letters that have been provided as they focus on victims of crime and Indigenous victims of crime, for lack of a better term. I believe that's what was used in the letters, which is not exactly what I think the proposal for restorative justice here is. There's a difference between victim of crime services, of which the city already supports through the RCMP, and there's an independent victims of crime services in the community as well already. So there's some duplication there. I also have some concerns with regards to the use of sentencing circles. And I note that Judge Wolf has written a letter in support which I think is of immense value and weight to be considered in regards to the value of restorative justice, and I certainly am not contesting the value of restorative justice. But the report or letter provided to us asking for municipal support goes on at length about the city's obligation to reconciliation, and that utilization of sentencing circles would be a reflection of that obligation to reconciliation. That may be true, but I do not know that to be true. It is abhorrent to reconciliation, in my view, to impose one nation's culture on another nation. And so without knowing the exact cultural process of sentencing circles and the utilization of such within the New Chalmouth community, I don't believe that they are necessarily a reconciliation to the cultures that are present within Port Alberni. There is every possibility that the concept of sentencing circles has been taken from another culture and society of Indigenous First Nation peoples. And if it's accepted because cultures and practices are regularly traded and gifted between First Nations, I am not aware, I take no position, I'm not saying I know anything about it. I am saying that it would be as negatively damaging as it could be positively beneficial to impose one culture's practices on another culture. So I think in that, Madam Mayor, I've hopefully asked a lot of questions as opposed to making criticisms, because again, restorative justice works. It works with youth diversion. I know it's used extensively by the correction services in our community already. So before the city supports it, I think I would like many of those questions answered. And I still, at this point in time, with our current budget and approach to city resources, don't see that at this point in time there is room to support the motions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other comments? Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I really appreciate this. I really appreciate the work and the approach of this, of restorative justice, and this group that's doing this. Unlike Councillor Patola, this is a relatively new concept to me, so it's been a learning process to understand it and understand its value and what it does, and it's very exciting for me to see that there are different, often better ways of doing things, and that there are people doing those things, and so I really love this. Having said that, I do agree that I am not convinced that this is a great fit as the city is a great fit as a funder and as a facilitator of this. But I wouldn't want to just dismiss it in a way that we just say no and move on. I would very much like to see us find a way that we can use our voice, use our influence to advocate and on their behalf in an appropriate way. So that's just what I would like to put out there, is just to say that if we aren't going to support these requests, that I would like to find some way that we can amplify their voice in trying to get the requested support from the appropriate channels. So, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you. I'll try and answer a couple of Councillor Patola's questions. He is absolutely right. Restorative justice has been around for quite some time. However, with the new president in place, Mr. Glassy, he has really invigorated the services that this organization offers. He pounds the pavement relentlessly, going out to service groups. He works closely with the RCMP and many other organizations within the community. So it is becoming extremely, the services that restorative justice offers has become really in demand right now as a solution to people who need these kinds of services. just to give you a statistic, people who commit a crime, the chances that they're going to reoffend is over 75%. People who go through the restorative justice system, the chances that they reoffend is just above 0%, so almost none. That's how successful the program is. And the short-term funding that he's looking at is just until it's a one-time ask, and it's just until these grant opportunities become realized. He's pretty confident that they will come in, but in the short term, there is a funding gap that they need help with in order to continue their services. Otherwise, they're going to have to start curtailing services to the community. Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments, or can we go to Councillor Mealy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, and thank you, Councillor Hager, for bringing this forward. So if I'm getting this correct, if this funding is successful, does that mean that the $20,000 would be paid back to the city? Is it more like a loan rather than a donation? Is that my understanding of it? Through you, Madam Mayor, to whoever can answer.
It's not my understanding that it will paid back, because when you get a grant, it's very specific, not for operational cost. So it would be a one-time funding request as interim financing for this organization.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just to kind of reiterate maybe what Councilor Patola said, and that was my first reaction, is this is an Alberni Valley initiative, and this should be at the ACRD meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you. So is council okay if we invite the applicant or the people up, representatives up to answer any of the questions that have been asked? And I will just add to that that specifically I would like to know if you have made a request at the ACRD, and if so, the details of that request.
Madam Mayor, Council, thanks for having me here, and thank you, Councillor Haggard, for advocating so strongly on our behalf. Thank you also the other councillors for their questions. And let me get the last question out first. Yes, we have just, as today, put forward an updated request to the ACRD for it's a very similar looking package with. Yeah, very similar looking package. Let me go to, if I can answer the first question, which is the work that we're doing a new need? No, the work that we're doing is not a new need. The need's been around for all the time that the society has been in Port Alberni, since 2001. The issue was that restorative justice, first of all, didn't have the capacity. They were working on a $4,000 a year budget. And the understanding at that time with regard to the applicability of restorative justice was really, it's there to take a couple of RCMP referrals every year, typically youth referrals, as has been pointed out. Restorative justice in the intervening 21 years or 24 years has really grown in its ability to prove that it can address a vast number of needs, not just youth spray painting the fences, but all the way up to sexual assaults, drug charges. We currently have a caseload right now of 12 or 13, and they range from very serious youth cases, which you can't go into any details, of course, but for example, assault with weapons, all the way up to, we have 2 drug possession charges, we have assaults, and these are adults, all of them are adults. We get referrals now from not only from RCMP. By the way, one of the reasons our the amount of cases we're getting has gone up is that the RCMP now has a KPI, a key performance indicator, about the number of referrals that they make to restorative justice, because they know that there is a gap between an incident and the criminal justice system. And if restorative justice is not there, does not have the capacity, then they have to make a decision as to whether to take that case and abandon it, or to take the case forward. And oftentimes they will take the case forward. And the people involved in the case then get treated by a criminal process many times and simply because there is no alternative that is better suited for that particular case. And so, for example, one of the cases we have right now involves 3 youth. It is an assault charge. It should not have gone to Crown. It did go to RCMP. It did go to Crown. And then Judge Wolf intervened and said this case really needs to go back to restorative justice only because he knows that we're here and able to take on the work and do the work. And in so doing, we will now, if this case is successful, we're almost at the end of it. We're very confident it's going to be successful, but you have 2 youths who will now be able to learn from the mistakes, serious mistakes that they've made, and not get involved with the criminal justice system, which would forever alter their life and add to the burden of our society in a way that would show up in subsequent council meetings. We will likely, last year we handled 11 cases. We currently have 13 cases that we're actively managing. We expect that we'll receive up to 60 cases in the coming year. We have applied for $1.7 million worth of grants just in the last 3 or 4 months. They are mostly, they're half provincial, half federal. So I totally respect where the grant money should be coming from. But grant requests and the receipt of those funds is being outstripped right now by the demand. So that's why we're looking for a one-time, get us through this crisis or this funding kind of gap until some of the other funds start to land. And we're pretty confident that they will land. We now also get referrals directly from Crown. We get them from defense lawyers. We get them from BC Corrections, who, you're absolutely right, does have a restorative, a restorative process. But it is a different process, and it's designed really for a different group of people, typically people who are coming out of incarceratory sentences. And whereas what we're trying to do is we're trying to get to people before they end up going through the process of RCMP, Crown Court, and then the corrections. Just check I was scribbling as fast as I could while these were coming out. We've talked about other funding. I can't talk about the fair rents right now. We simply don't have the funding to be able to afford space, and that's just simply not going to come. The funding is not going to come quickly. On to the Indigenous victims of crime, so much of the criminal justice system focuses purely on the defendant, on the person who's done the harm. Restorative justice really brings the other people who have been affected. I would have loved to be able to film the circle that we had on Saturday. It was a 3.5-hour circle. We had 2 youth in the circle and 10 adults, and we almost ran out of Kleenex. We had 2 boxes going around the circle, and because the impact of the harm that had been done was profoundly impacting some of the adults in the community who had to deal with it, and there's only one way for them to be able to resolve that, other than going to their own independent counseling, is to come together and work as a community. This really does bring the community back together again after a harm, which in this case was a profound harm. I'll have to defer. I think you talked about sentencing circles, or I think there was a discussion about sentencing circles and then imposing one's nation's culture on another culture. We are very, very careful with the work that we do. We understand that the non-Indigenous culture and every single independent nation has a different way of approaching this. And when we get our case, we have the flexibility to be able to go back out to the nations if they're involved. If we have multiple nations involved, we have a citizen of one nation, a citizen of another nation, people from non-Indigenous communities. We actually sit down with all of them, including going out to the chiefs and the elders of the nations that are impacted. Their citizens are there, and we are able to put together a process that is respectful of and incorporates their cultural and their historical approaches to harm and healing. It's a fascinating, I have to say that I've been doing this now for a year and a half. It's an absolutely extraordinary experience. And I have learned more about all of the various peoples that live in this town. Again, I would love to talk with you more about it if I can. I've mentioned it's not just youth, it's adults. And I will say that if I can be a little tongue in cheek, the $20,000 ask is certainly less than the replacement cost for a $20,000 Toyota Tacoma. Quite frankly, we shouldn't be replaced at all because those things are bulletproof and go forever. Tacoma driver. Are there any other questions or comments that I can respond to? I hope I was able to answer as much as I could. Jackie Chambers is also a facilitator with us and is a member of the board.
If I may, I was also taking notes when Councillor Patola was listing some of his concerns. And, we can say that restorative justice works and that it's a good thing, but one of your key concerns is, should the city actually be taking care of it? And I heard you ask that question. And so I'd just like to think about the situations that our citizens would be in if they didn't have this service available to them. And these are our citizens. And so their lives are definitely, their directions will change because of what we're able to offer them. I noticed that Councillor Haggard suggested that the funding come from the RCMP reserve funding. And the RCMP is our local RCMP. They work with our citizens. And as Alex mentioned, they now do have a key performance indicator of referring more cases to restorative justice. And so earlier in the meeting, when you said the trees should pay for the trees, I feel that there's a little bit of synchronicity here when we look at asking the reserve, not even from the budget, the reserve, taking that money and using that money to help us close this gap while we wait for our funding. There's lots more I could say with regards to restorative justice, but I feel that people are tired, and I think you've heard plenty. If you have more questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much to both of you.
So, excuse me, can I add two more very quick points?
Well, you can. Sure, go ahead.
The $20,000 will help to unlock as much as 6,000 volunteer hours. I just want to put that out there. That is an incredible commitment from this community, the citizens of Port Alberni. Most of the cases are done in Port Alberni. And I forgot the other point, so I'll yield.
Thank you. Okay, comments? Councillor Patola.
I just, I think I need to reiterate because people often don't hear when you say positive things. And the stories that have been communicated and the experience of this Restorative Justice Society is not debatable. Restorative justice works. It certainly does. Just in case you don't think I know what I'm talking about, I was involved in that career for 22 years. My oldest brother was a counselor for Youth Restorative Justice in Vancouver for 20 years. I know about restorative justice. And in a lot of cases it works. It is a form of corrections. It is not within the jurisdiction of the city. And when the delegates say that they've applied for provincial and federal grants, I say great, because that's who should be paying for it. And when they say, but the requests have outstripped the supply, that leads me to say that, to conclude that the responsible jurisdictions have tried to provide and the need is greater than what is available. I think that's true for everything that tax dollars pay for. We are not offering a grant, but we've been asked to provide. So it's not even a question of, oh, we offered some support and the demand has outstripped it. No, we have not even offered a grant because currently the city's budgets are entirely taken up with those things that are within our jurisdiction and the city is required to do. To suggest that the RCMP reserve is some kind of extra money that is not part of a budget, it is directly part of the city's budget. It comes from taxpayers' dollars. It's simply a reserve is part of the budget that was not spent in one year that is held over to the next year. It's not magic. It comes out of your neighbor's pockets. So this simply is not a tool, as great of a tool as it is, that the city should be paying for, as opposed to a Tacoma, which may not seem glamorous, but is used in the provision of services that the city is required to provide. So, once again, nothing negative to say about restorative justice. It's absolutely fantastic. It's great that we have a local judge that supports it. Judge Wolf has been an incredible asset to our community and the communities on the West Coast. Having said that, even if we were to be offering a grant, I would expect an application for a grant to do more than just say, we want some money. I still don't know what that money is for, except that it's going to unlock 6,000 volunteer hours. I don't know if that goes to wages, if it goes to equipment, what it goes to. So I simply cannot support the request as much as I support restorative justice. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to agree with everything you've said, Councillor Patola, because it's all correct. It is, as much as I think we don't like it, and I don't like it at all. But it is correct, and that is the reality of where we're at. It's the reality of, in a lot of ways, how we've gotten where we're at. And I think that can be correct, and we can also use common sense, because look at all the good that this is doing. I don't want to increase our budget either, but I have a hard time thinking that we have a $9 million RCMP budget and we can't find $20,000 for this. So I don't want to increase our budget, but I would definitely make a motion that we recommend to council that we find a reduction within the RCMP budget of $20,000 and reallocate it to restorative justice as a one-time grant. If someone wants a second. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dame. We get a return from RCMP every year for unused, unstaffed hours. I cannot imagine that we can't make this work. I'm looking at the budget for this year for RCMP, and its police services contract, $7,968,000. Police services administration, $1,505,000. Police services consulting, $38,750. Community policing, police building maintenance, $294,000. Detention and custody of prisoners, $600,000. All in all, now our community policing is in there, but it's actually over $10 million, about $10,300,000 on RCMP. And I think we can reduce that by 20,000 in some way and shift that to restorative justice. Because I agree, and one time, I agree that this is not something we should fund. But I also can't look past the excellent work that is being done and say that we can't find the money within one of our budgets. So it's a tough budget year. I hope that's a bit of a win-win, and I don't think it's going to end up being a problem for the RCMP. So I'll open that up to discussion if anyone would like to comment. Councillor Dame.
Yeah, this is a tough one because I do agree with Councillor Patola's sort of assessment of the responsibility of the whose mandate it is. But I'm, as I've been listening and thinking, I'm more and more convinced that these are things that are also within a municipal, not a mandate necessarily, but there's more to what we do than I guess just the day-to-day functioning of the city. And sometimes it's supporting initiatives that are going to make a far-reaching impact on our residents. And this is such a relatively minor ask compared to many of the things that we are funding all the time. And this also has the potential to reduce some of those costs in the long term as well. And I just in general support new ways of doing things that, rather than just maintaining so many of these systems that are not necessarily giving us the value anymore, or maybe they never were. So yes, I'm going to support this, and I agree.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Verbrugge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Todd brings forward quite a few different pros and cons to the whole situation, and I agree with the pros, I agree with the cons. And bottom line is, I think this is a stopgap measure. It's an in-between measure. They have funding hopefully coming from the province, and yes, I would support it also.
Thank you. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I again agree with a lot of what's said around here. I would really love the ACRD to get a first crack at this. I would love at least, or I would support a sharing of that with the ACRD at least.
Thank you. And ACRD, of course, is in their grant and aid process. And so just for council's awareness, Councillor Haggard and I have the ability to opt ourselves out of funding something, like on behalf of the city, when we have contributed at in the municipality. So as we continue through those discussions, we will certainly advocate for this at the ACRD, but not participate in funding it. So in theory, it can be funded in both places without duplicating. We would not contribute twice. And yeah, I mean, the downside, we have to be realistic, is it may not be funded there. But we can certainly push for it. Okay, and sorry, Councillor Haggard, I see your tiny little hand up in the corner of your screen.
I know. I don't know if anyone seconded your motion, but I'll second your motion, Madam Mayor. And I was just going to add, we do many, many things. The city does many things that isn't within our realm of responsibility. That's just the nature of the game right now. Years ago, we would never be looking at this. Years ago, we would never be looking at housing. Years ago, we'd never be looking at the opioid crisis or the medical crisis, but these are things that we are required to do now. Thank you.
Thank you. And I mean, I think again, like it's important to note here that like multiple things can be correct, and that is correct. Sometimes we have to be creative, and we also need to stop. And I think to Councillor Patola's points, like we can't keep funding things that are not our responsibility. So I'm hoping this is a bit of a kind of balance between that by reducing a relevant budget. But yeah. Anyways, that's all I have to say. Any further comments, Councillor Dame?
Yeah, just a quick one. And yeah, again, great points all around. And Councillor Verbrugge made a great comment in that this is in many ways a stopgap. I don't think that this should be something that we indefinitely fund, but I would like to see this, sort of be like planting a seed. And I think that this could really be something that is good for our community. So, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further comments on the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everyone. And Councillor Haggard, you're certainly welcome to read any of your motions as well. Sorry, I didn't let you do that before I made one.
Thank you. I'd like to move that the Committee of the Whole recommend Council direct staff to assist the Alberni Valley Restorative Justice Society in locating suitable office space within city facilities and offer to their organization as an in-kind contribution.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any discussion on this, CAO?
Thanks, and through the chair, I'm just curious if this is including like a permanent office. Like what is all included in the in-kind? Is it storage, chairs, desk, computer? Just wanting clarification on that. Sorry, as I look for this.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Haggard, do you have any information?
I don't have that information. Maybe Alex could answer that.
Madam Mayor, it would just be space, and we can provide everything else.
Thank you. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, just, I would like to just note for my own is that this is more up my alley in the way of an in-kind contribution. And I would be supporting this, and I would support the next motion as well, if presented.
Thank you. And I will just say that I actually have kind of a hard time thinking about the office space, just because I know that we are kind of challenged for office space as it is. So I feel like this is a bit of a go nowhere motion, to be really honest. I can't imagine that we're gonna end up finding office space. If there was something that was suitable, and I had actually previously suggested that maybe there is, space within the RCMP, or possibly there's some ability to use some of the public safety building. Maybe not on like a permanent basis, but on a per use kind of basis. Mike?
Through the chair, it depends on when it will be used and then how an agreement is done up. We do have a desk space at the community safety building. If all materials are removed, we do have the committee room there at the safety building. Again, it really fits around the parameters. That's why I was wondering if items would have to remain storage, et cetera. So we can work with the group though on what their needs are and see if we have it. If we don't have what they're looking for, we can come back to council and let you know.
Okay, that's great. And maybe even if you do have what they're looking for, you can come back to council just so the council is kept informed before a formal decision is made. Okay? Okay. Then seeing no more comments on the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. And Councillor Haggard.
Thank you. I'd like to move that the Committee of the Whole recommend Council direct administration to accommodate the Alberni Valley Restorative Justice Society access to the Echo Park Fieldhouse up to a maximum of 3 times per month to use as surplus space scheduled on other facility bookings at no cost up to and including December 31st, 2025. And further, that the Committee of the Whole recommend Council direct administration that the Alberni Valley Restorative Justice Society be required to apply for the Community Investment Program for the year 2026 and onward for continued support from the City of Port Alberni for the use of city facility meeting spaces.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Discussion? Okay. Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your support.
Thank you, Councillor Haggard. And moving on to question period. This is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of council. Joseph.
Bother, but again, thank you for the time you're spending tonight and all the work that you're doing. Just a quick question, but I have to read something because I'm not great at summarizing things. I'm just going to read it. It's under page 17 on tonight's agenda under insurance. And this was brought up earlier and you guys went through this. So I just have a question on this. So it mentions currently the insurance of all of the city property is within, all of the insurance for all the city property is within the administration portion of the financial plan. With a facility review and all the desire to better understand the true costs of delivering services, administration will be amending allocation and creating new budget lines to improve reporting. These changes will not have any impact on the overall taxation, just the location display of the financial plan. The value below is currently in the administration section of the plan and will be removed and set up within each facility moving forward. So it mentions all city properties within administration fall under the financial plan, and these few have been brought out as being separated and then put under each facility moving forward. And my question is, will you be removing all city properties within the administration portion of the financial plan and set them up within each facility as you have on the mentioned properties?
CAO.
Yeah, thanks for the question. That is the intention, is to slowly work through and end up making each service pay for the insurance, et cetera, to break it out appropriately. I see the Director of Finance coming up, so he might have more information to add to that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, to the member of the public. So the intent is to bring it forward and then list out the changes that are made so that it'd be clear to the committee, council, and the public.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so it was, that was, I think I mentioned, I asked this question before about insurance on the lands of the SOMAS, and I was told at that time they're covered under an umbrella policy. And so this is like, okay, so is that part of that? Well, I know what that is at that point. So yeah, so it's interesting to know that you've, these ones that are brought up, and I noticed 3 of them that you brought up, and I think that was mentioned too, that the Roland Arts Center is no longer, and that will be changing as far as the insurance costs on that. Also, Cedarwood School, I think is, I don't know if you mentioned, that's no longer either. And the Tebow Trade Center is in the process of the college looking at building a new building. So these are, I'm not quite sure why these were picked out as being on this particular agenda, but great, thank you.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Madam Chair, these were picked out because they currently are not separated out in any means within the financial plan. So when we look at the multiplex, the aquatic center, other facilities, they're separate. But I just wanted to pull that out because they might not even be on council's radar as far as facilities that we own. And Stepping Stones 2 is currently occupying the Cedarwood School. So that's a building that we own, but there's no line item there. So when we bring these out, they're going to show up, obviously. Just noting that when we talk about the umbrella policy for insurance, that's including the liability portion. So there's no assets that we're insuring at the SOMAS site. So there's no insurance cost for property. So what I will do when I do bring forward the information as far as liability, we can look at different options as far as assigning liability costs across the organization. But in all likelihood, that might remain within admin, depending on direction from council. But it's just really an opportunity to further explore an understanding of each line item so that there's that transparency and understanding.
Absolutely, thank you. Okay, seeing no additional questions, would somebody like to move adjournment? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed, meeting adjourned.